Predator Survival Instinct. Created and written by Sherry Amori. Chapter 1. The woods were restless at dusk. The dying sun bled its last light across the treetops, smearing the sky in shades of ember and ash. Below, the forest hummed with life, the faint chatter of crickets, the flitting of unseen wings, the distant hoot of an owl calling across the timber. Marcus moved with the steady patience of a seasoned hunter, his dark brown complexion catching the faint traces of moonlight that filtered through the trees. His face was framed by a short beard, eyes sharp and attentive, trained to catch even the slightest movement in the underbrush. A weathered camo jacket clung to his frame, its fabric faded from long days in the wild, while a rifle was slung across his back, balanced as naturally as an extension of his own body. Around his neck hung a small leather cord threaded with a bear claw, a trophy from his first hunt with his late father. His boots, scarred and worn from countless treks, crunched against leaves that hadn't felt a man's step in weeks. The path was half forgotten, nearly erased by time, but Marcus knew it well. He had hunted here since boyhood, when his father first taught him to follow the tracks of deer and listen to the language of the trees. Yet tonight, his purpose wasn't game. It was something heavier, sharper, a weight that had gnawed at him for days. Hunters had gone missing. Men as seasoned as he was, swallowed by these woods without so much as a blood trail. People in town whispered theories, wildcats, bear attacks, or darker things no one dared say aloud. But Marcus had heard more than whispers, strange sounds. His rifle hung from his shoulder, but his hand gripped the flashlight instead, sweeping its pale beam across the trees. Shadows shifted and scattered like insects. His breath fogged in the cooling air, the tension in his chest growing thicker with every step. Then he saw it. A marking gouged deep into the bark of a pine tree. Jagged, harsh. Nothing natural could have made it. He approached, brow furrowed, and touched it with his calloused fingers. The grooves were deep, sharp-edged, as though carved by a blade, not a knife, not any tool he recognized. A sound drifted across the quiet, a dry, staccato clicking that cut through the forest's hush like the grinding of bone on bone. It wasn't the casual rhythm of an insect, nor the chatter of any woodland animal. It was sharper, mechanical, yet strangely organic, as if something alive was forcing its throat to imitate machinery. The clicks rolled in uneven bursts, rapid fire like the cocking of 100 tiny triggers, then pausing in a silence heavy enough to make the air feel brittle. Marcus froze, breath caught in his throat. He knew the woods. He knew its sounds. This did not belong. Heart pounding, Marcus stepped off the path, following the faint sound. His light cut through the darkness, and then he saw it, a shimmer in the air, like water bending in sunlight. The forest itself seemed to ripple before him. "What the hell?" he whispered, his voice catching. Marcus kept his eye on the shimmer and backed away toward the path. An uneasy feeling tightened in his chest, but something else caught his eye. A footprint, pressed deep into the mud. Too wide, too long, four-toed, human-like, and monstrous. No deer, no bear, not even close. "What in God's name?" he muttered, his voice cracking with disbelief. A sudden rustle snapped behind him. Marcus spun, his flashlight beams slicing the trees, searching through the underbrush. Nothing. Just empty black. His chest tightened more. He was a hunter, yes, but tonight he felt like he was prey. The flashlight flickered, once, twice, then dimmed, plunging the woods into choking darkness. The clicking sound returned, louder now, close, right behind him. With only the moonlight casting light in the dark words, Marcus yanked his rifle from his shoulder, his hands slick with sweat. "Who's there?" he barked, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Show yourself!" Silence. Then a red glow. 3 perfect dots bloomed on his chest, steady and unblinking. He stared down at them, confusion giving way to horror. His breath came shallow, rapidly. Something moved ahead, the shimmering form he saw moments before. A full shape emerged from thin air. The figure was massive, towering over him with a presence that seemed to swallow the night itself. Moonlight slid across its armor, revealing plates etched with strange glyphs and scarred from battles older than any man alive. The phantom's body rippled with corded muscle beneath a lattice of netted mesh, each movement betraying the controlled power of something bred to hunt. Its skin, mottled in shades of shadowed bronze and ash, gleamed slick where the light caught it, textured like reptilian hide stretched taut over stone. From beneath the ridged crown of its skull, 2 burning yellow eyes glared with cruel intelligence, unblinking, predatory, as though it had already dissected him a dozen times in its mind. The mandibles unfurled with a metallic rasp, snapping open to expose curved tusks glistening with saliva. The sound was both mechanical and primal, a guttural declaration that words were unnecessary. The hunter had found its prey. Marcus stumbled back, his pulse hammering in his throat. His mouth was dry, but he managed to whisper, What are you?" The phantom stepped forward, the shimmer of its camouflage rippling like broken glass before vanishing altogether, revealing its monstrous form in full. The air itself seemed to sigh as the cloak dissolved, leaving behind a towering silhouette, armored in dark plates that drank in the moonlight. Its wrist gauntlet came alive with a sudden flare of light, tiny alien runes pulsing across the surface like molten veins. With a low mechanical hiss, metal shifted and locked into place. From the housing, a pair of blades snapped forward, sleek, impossibly sharp, each one curved to a predatory arc and glistening as though thirsting for blood. They gleamed wickedly, catching the pale glow of the night, promising a clean kill delivered with brutal elegance. The phantom flexed its arm, and the twin weapons whispered against the air, an extension of the hunter's will made manifest. "Stay back," Marcus shouted, raising his rifle. He fired once. The shot exploded into the night, but the bullet ricocheted harmlessly off the phantom's armor. It didn't even flinch. In a heartbeat, it was on him. The blade whistled through the air, cutting close. Marcus swung his rifle like a club, smashing it against the phantom's ribs. It was like striking a wall. The phantom barely shifted. Its mandibles flared wide, and with a guttural snarl it struck back, its massive hand lashing across Marcus's face. The blow knocked him off his feet. His head cracked against the ground, vision blurring. His ears rang with the impact. He blinked, blood running down his temple, but he forced himself to look up. The phantom loomed above, its shadow blotting out the moon. Marcus coughed, tasting iron, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. His voice came hoarse but steady. "Please, don't." The phantom tilted its head, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. Then the wrist blade rose, gleaming in the moonlight. Marcus's last act was to glare into those alien eyes, unyielding. The blade came down in a flash of silver. Flesh tore, blood sprayed hot against the leaves, and the forest screamed with silence once more. Only the echo of his defiance lingered in the trees. Chapter 2. The car engine rumbled to a stop, the low growl of Amaya's black Chevy Malibu fading into silence. The vehicle bore the marks of long miles, dust clinging to the wheel wells, a faint scratch along the passenger door, and a dream catcher swaying gently from the rearview mirror. Its hood dulled here and there by road grit and the wear of everyday travel. Amaya has smooth chocolate-brown skin with mid-back length sister locks that framed her face in loose, confident strands, sat with her hands resting on the steering wheel. Her dark eyes held a sharp, steady focus that suggested she'd seen more than most and learned from it, lingered on the home she'd grown up in, a modest, single-family home framed in familiar tan siding with matching tan trim that had faded slightly with time. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and honeysuckle, carried on a warm, late-afternoon Augusta breeze, wrapping her in a sense of nostalgia, both comforting and bittersweet. Somewhere in the distance, traffic murmured like a restless tide, but here in her mother's neighborhood, it was quiet, safe. She climbed out of her car and headed to the porch. The front porch light flickered weakly against the growing dusk. Birds chattered in the trees. For just a heartbeat, Amaya felt something like peace. The door creaked before she reached the first step on the porch. "Amaya!" Her mother's voice, warm, aged, worn with both love and worry. Amaya smiled wide. "Hey, Mama." Her mother stood in the doorway, only 5 feet 3 inches, but with a presence that filled the space. Short hair, cropped close in a boyish cut, was streaked with black and white, each strand glinting under the mid-afternoon sunlight. Time had etched fine lines at the corners of her warm brown eyes, but the softness in them hadn't dimmed. There was strength in her stance, a quiet resilience born of years spent holding a household together through hardship and joy alike. Even the way she folded her arms across her chest carried both firmness and love, the balance of a woman who had weathered storms yet still greeted her daughter with open warmth. The faint scent of fresh cornbread clung to her, a reminder of the home-cooked meals she grew up eating. "Girl, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice carrying both surprise and the kind of love that made the years between visits fall away in an instant. "I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by." Amaya stepped inside, the air instantly thick with the scent of baked chicken and collard greens. It was home, every piece of it. But her mother wasn't smiling fully now. She shook her head, moving toward the kitchen. "Seems the only time I see you these days is when work drags you up this way." "Sorry, Mama," Amaya said gently, following her in. "I'll do better, I promise." The evening news was playing low on the television in the kitchen. Dishes clattered as her mother set 2 plates on the counter, a soft sigh breaking her rhythm. "You should move back here. That place you're in, out in Sparta." Her mother trailed off, her lips pressed thin. "It isn't safe. Not anymore." Amaya leaned against the counter, arms folded, her expression soft but unbending. "Mama, I'm fine. I like isolation. Besides, I'm not alone. I've got Roscoe. Plus, every summer when Dad lived there, we were always spending time in those woods." Her mother arched a brow. "Roscoe? He's just a puppy. He runs off half the time. What good is he gonna do when something out there comes for you?" "Roscoe is a 1-year-old black Labrador. He has a sleek, glossy coat and big, eager paws that still hinted at his youth. His warm brown eyes carry a playful curiosity, and his boundless energy is matched only by his loyalty. Affectionate and eager to please, he is always quick to tumble into mischief, as he was to nuzzle close for comfort. Amaya chuckled softly, but there was steel under her words. "He's more alert than most men, Mama. He keeps me safe." Before her mother could argue, the television in the kitchen swelled with a breaking news jingle. Both women turned instinctively. The male anchor's voice was clipped, urgent. "In breaking news, authorities in Sparta, Georgia confirm that multiple hunters have gone missing in the dense forests surrounding the town. Search teams are scouring the area, but no clues have surfaced. Officials are urging extreme caution. This marks the third week of disappearances linked to the woods. Locals are advised to avoid unnecessary trips until further notice." The sound seemed to drain the warmth from the kitchen. Her mother's eyes darted to her. "See? You hear that? Hunters, grown men, vanishing. And you're living right there, out in those woods." Amaya forced calm into her voice, though her chest tightened. "Mama, I'm fine. I'm not in those woods every day, just sometimes, when I need to take a walk. I know them better than anyone." Her mother sat down heavily, her hand trembling on the table. "It's not just the woods, Amaya. It's the company you keep. Those men you've mentioned before, Dante and the others, out there drinking, carrying rifles like they own the place. You trust them?" Amaya slid into the chair across from her, leaning forward. "Dante's rough, sure, but he and his friends, Jamal, Mike, they've hunted those woods their whole lives. They look out for me. They wouldn't let anything happen." Her mother's face tightened, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You remember that girl? Years ago, vanished in those same woods. Sheriff said it was an accident, but I never believed that. I've always had a bad feeling about that place." The memory struck Amaya like a cold wind. She swallowed, then reached across the table and clasped her mother's hand. "I remember, Mama, but I promise, I'm careful. Nothing's going to happen to me, not with Roscoe around." Her mother squeezed her hand, but her eyes shone with unease. "Just be careful. Keep that dog close. Don't be wandering too long out there. These hunters goin' missin'." She shook her head, her voice trailing off. "It doesn't feel right." Amaya nodded, though her thoughts were elsewhere. The unease in her mother's words mirrored something she herself had felt lately. A heaviness in the woods, a wrongness in the silence at night. She glanced at the digital clock on the wall. "I should get going. I have things to do around the house. Roscoe's probably wreaking havoc in the yard, waiting for me to come home and feed him." Her mother stood reluctantly, following her to the door. "Call me when you get home. Promise me that." "I will." Amaya smiled, trying to soothe her, though her own nerves had started to prickle. Her mother's voice sharpened as Amaya opened the door. "And listen, if anything feels strange or out of place, you come straight back here. No questions. Just come." Amaya laughed lightly, waving as she stepped into the evening air. "Yes, Mama, I promise." The metal screen door creaked shut behind her. She crossed the driveway, the sound of her hollow footsteps in the growing dark. The driver's side door slammed with a heavy thud. A moment later, the engine roared back to life. As Amaya pulled away, the quiet suburban street seemed to hold its breath, shadows stretching longer with the fading light. Her mother stood at the metal screen door, staring after her car long after it had vanished from sight, her heart tight with a dread she couldn't shake. Chapter 3. The hum of Amaya's car was steady, a low purr that carried her away from Augusta's suburban quiet into the rolling dark of Georgia's country roads. The city lights fell behind her, swallowed by trees that leaned over the asphalt like watchful sentinels. Wind slipped through her half-cracked window, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and something faintly metallic, like rain waiting to fall. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her mother's voice still clung to her thoughts, sharp with worry. If anything feels strange or out of place, you come straight back here. For years, the woods of Sparta had been her sanctuary. She loved the isolation, the way the forest sang differently than any place else. But tonight, her chest felt heavier with each mile. Maybe it was the news anchor's stern voice echoing in her head. Maybe it was her mother's trembling hand on hers. Or maybe it was something deeper, an instinct, raw and primal, telling her that the woods weren't as safe as she pretended they were. The headlights carved twin tunnels through the dark. Here and there, the glowing eyes of deer flashed back at her from the tree line before vanishing into the brush. Amaya pressed her foot gently on the accelerator, eager to get home before night claimed the last of the horizon. But the gas needle dipped lower than she'd expected. "Damn," she muttered, flicking her eyes toward the gauge. She sighed and steered toward the nearest gas station. The Valero gas station was half-lit, its buzzing fluorescent sign fighting against the dark. The lot was mostly empty, except for two dusty pickup trucks parked haphazardly by the store entrance. Amaya pulled into a pump, the crunch of gravel under her tires echoing too loudly in the night. She stepped out, the air thicker here, quieter. Crickets had gone silent. Only the rasp of the wind against the trees remained. The smell of gasoline hung faint, cloying. She slid her card, punched the buttons, and began pumping fuel, her eyes wandering toward the station's glass doors. Inside, the yellow glow of fluorescent lights revealed a small group gathered at the counter. The guys. Even from here, she recognized Dante's tall frame, his broad shoulders carrying the weight of years in uniform, the kind of stance that was more swagger than posture. Dante's strong brown face bore the calm confidence of a retired army vet whose discipline lingered in the way he carried himself. His cap was turned backward, shadowing sharp eyes that missed little, and his camo jacket was stained with old mud and grease, each mark a testament to hunts and hard work. He leaned against the counter, talking fast with the clerk, his voice steady but commanding, as though every word had gravity. At his side stood Mike, his build solid through the middle, but not as imposing as Dante. His expression was serious, his full lips pressed into a thin line beneath neatly trimmed facial hair. There was a quiet, no-nonsense edge to him, the kind of man who spoke less but carried weight when he did. His stance was steady, hands tucked into the pockets of a dark jacket, eyes scanning the store like he was measuring exits and angles. On the other side lounged Jamal, tall and slim, with skin dark as polished mahogany, his build wiry and quick. Where the others stood like stones, Jamal shifted with restless energy, grinning at something only he found funny. His voice carried an easy humor that cut through the room, his laughter quick and sharp. He leaned on the counter with a casual slouch, tossing out playful remarks to lighten the mood, his charm balancing the seriousness of his friends. Together, the three of them filled the space with presence, soldier, sentinel, and jester, each distinct yet bound by the camaraderie of men who had shared long nights and hard hunts. They laughed at something the clerk said, rough voices muffled through the glass. Dante slapped the counter with a loud crack, startling the clerk, then smirked as if he owned the whole damn store. Amaya watched quietly, her eyes narrowing. She knew them, good men, reckless at times, the kind her mother worried over. Tonight, though, there was something about the way they stood there. Too animated, too loud. Their laughter didn't carry warmth. It carried edge. The pump clicked, jolting her from her thoughts. She pulled the nozzle free, slid it back into place, and glanced one more time at the group inside. Jamal caught sight of her through the glass. His grin widened, and he gave her a mock salute. Dante followed his gaze, eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her shift uncomfortably. He tapped Mike on the shoulder, said something Amaya couldn't hear, and all three of them turned to look at her. Amaya straightened, set her jaw, and reached for her keys. She wasn't afraid of Dante and his crew, but as their shadows flickered under the harsh lights of the store, something about the moment, about the silence outside, the news report still playing in her head, her mother's warning whispering at the edges of her thoughts, made her stomach knot. The woods were waiting, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going back into them alone. Chapter 4. Amaya had never cared much for small talk. The hum of fluorescent lights and chatter of strangers always felt too sharp, too close. But tonight, the Valero station in Sparta buzzed with more than just idle voices. The bell above the glass door jingled as she stepped inside, the smell of burnt coffee and motor oil hitting her at once. Her boots clicked against the scuffed tile, and her eyes swept the aisles. At the back, near the counter, three familiar figures stood huddled close: Dante, Jamal, and Mike. They weren't laughing like usual. Their voices carried an undercurrent, low, tight, restless. "Well, well, if it isn't Amaya," Dante called out, his grin flashing wide the moment he saw her. His voice tried to be playful, but it had a nervous edge. "You out here getting supplies for another one of your nature walks?" Amaya gave the faintest smile, polite but reserved, and turned toward the refrigerator. The cool light spilled over her face as she grabbed a red Powerade, the plastic sweating cold against her palm. "Just gas," she murmured, brushing past, her voice low. "Heading home." But Dante wasn't one to let go easy. He stepped away from the counter, swagger in his step, and planted himself in her path. "You always so quiet, Amaya," he teased. "Gotta get you out with us again sometime. Ain't no fun keeping to yourself all the time." Amaya lifted her chin, meeting his gaze for only a moment before looking away. "It was fun, but I like the quiet, and you guys are loud and rowdy," she said with a slight giggle. Behind him, Jamal and Mike exchanged a glance. Something heavy passed between them. Jamal shifted, rubbing his jaw, then finally spoke. His voice wasn't his usual booming bravado. It was low, careful. "You heard about Marcus, right?" Amaya stilled, fingers tightening around the bottle. Slowly she turned. "Marcus? Yeah, your friend from Milledgeville. What happened?" Mike nodded grimly. "He went out hunting a couple nights back. Nobody has seen him since. Search parties have been looking for him, but nothing." The hum of the cooler seemed louder suddenly, drowning the silence that followed. Amaya's stomach twisted. She tapped her fingers against the bottle, eyes dropping to the counter, as though the linoleum could offer answers. "That's strange," she whispered at last. "He was good about staying on the trails and is a seasoned hunter. Y'all think it's a bear? Or something else?" Their silence was answer enough. Dante stepped closer, his voice dropping into something darker, more serious than she'd ever heard from him. "It's more than strange. There's something out there." His eyes narrowed, haunted in a way that made Amaya's chest tighten. "I know those woods, every tree, every creek. But lately?" He shook his head. "It doesn't feel the same. It feels foreign, as if the trees are watching you. You know what I mean, Amaya?" Her breath caught. For a moment, she considered lying. But the truth slipped out in a hushed tone. "Yes, Lately, I've been hearing things I can't explain. A silence fell over them all, thick as fog. Mike snorted and shook his head quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Probably just your imagination, right? The woods will play tricks on you if you let it. Maybe, but I did speak to my dad a few days ago. He thinks a prisoner may have escaped from Hancock State Prison and the police are just keeping it quiet until they catch him. Amaya whispered, though her voice betrayed her doubt. The guys looked at each other as she stepped toward the counter, placing the Powerade down with finality. She wanted to leave and get away from their stares, away from the tension pressing down on her chest. But Jamal's voice stopped her cold. I don't think it's your imagination or an escaped prisoner, he said, quieter than before. His eyes darted toward Dante and Mike, but he pressed on. I've been out there, near where I think Marcus went missing. He paused, his Adam's apple bobbing. Something's wrong. The animals are acting strangely. Birds don't sing there anymore. And the smell. His words trailed into a whisper. Like blood in the air. Thick, heavy. Whatever's out there, it isn't natural. And with you being out there alone? Amaya straightened, her voice firm despite the prickle of unease clawing her spine. I'll be fine. Dante nodded slowly, almost solemn now. We know you can handle yourself, just don't go back in the woods until we figure this out. Dante, I'm fine, Amaya replied, her tone final. I never go out after dark. Plus, Roscoe's always with me. But thanks for looking out for me. Y'all should be careful too. And if you hear anything about Marcus. She left the sentence unfinished, but they understood. After paying for the Powerade, Amaya headed for the door. The bell chimed sharply as she stepped into the night, leaving their uneasy stares behind her. The gravel crunched under her boots as she crossed back to her car. She slid inside, the seat creaking softly, and started the engine. The headlights cut across the parking lot, catching the hunters still lingering at the counter inside, shadows stretching long behind them. She pulled away, the tires spitting stones, the woods looming in the distance. Darker now, heavier. Almost as if the trees themselves were waiting, patient, hungry. Something in her gut twisted. Her mother's warning whispered again. If anything feels strange or out of place, you come straight back. But Amaya drove home. Chapter 5. The dirt road narrowed until it was little more than a winding scar through the trees. Amaya's headlights bounced against the ruts, the car engine growling as it climbed the last stretch toward her property. Her triple-wide trailer sat in its usual patch of solitude, the clearing half swallowed by tall pines that pressed in from every side. She eased to a stop, the car sputtering into silence. The sky above had turned the color of her bruise, dark violet clouds boiling in from the horizon. Thunder rolled low, like a warning whispered from miles away, and the wind was picking up long sighs through the trees, rattling branches together like bones. Amaya killed the headlights, and for a moment, the world fell into a heavy darkness, broken only by the glow of her porch light. Normally, this was the moment Roscoe would come bounding across the clearing, ears flopping, tail wagging, his bark sharp with excitement. But tonight, nothing. No movement, no bark, just silence. Her smile faltered. She stepped out, the door shutting with a solid thunk. The air was cooler here, carrying the metallic tang of the coming storm. She cupped her hands to her mouth and called out with a faint, playful lilt. Roscoe, here, boy! Her voice carried into the trees. The only reply was the restless rustling of leaves. She waited. Nothing came. Amaya sighed, her eyes drifting along the tree line. The woods stared back, dark and still, as though holding their breath. Her shoulders eased a fraction, and she let out a soft chuckle. "Must be off chasing deer again," she muttered, her lips curved in a tired smile. "You better hurry back before this storm hits." The wind shifted suddenly, colder this time, brushing her arms in a way that made her skin prickle. She shook it off and headed toward the porch. Amaya unlocked the front door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of wood polish and lavender filling her nose. She made her way to the kitchen, grabbed the large bag of kibble from its spot beside the pantry, and scooped out a hearty portion. The boards groaned under her weight as she carried the bowl back outside, bending low to set down Roscoe's metal dish on the porch. The kibble rattled loudly as Amaya shakes the bowl from left to right to call Roscoe home. The sound felt out of place, too sharp in the silence that hung around the clearing. Still no barking, or Roscoe. She bent over and put the bowl down on the porch in Roscoe's favorite spot near the door and straightened up, brushing her hands together. Another roll of thunder cracked across the sky, closer this time, its echo rattling through the woods. The storm was coming fast, and Roscoe still hadn't come home. Amaya's eyes lingered on the trees a moment longer. The knot of unease settled deeper in her stomach. The forest looked darker tonight, the shadows thicker, as though the storm weren't the only thing pressing in on her little patch of land. Chapter 6. The screen door clattered shut behind her as Amaya stepped into the dim glow of her living room. The silence of the trailer felt heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint rattle of wind against the siding. She dropped her keys onto the counter with a hollow clink, exhaling slowly as she reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over her mother's number for a beat. She already knew how the call would go: concern, worry, warnings. But if she didn't call, Mama would just keep fretting. With a sigh, Amaya pressed call and raised the phone to her ear. As the line rang, she muttered under her breath, "She's going to ask 100 questions. I know it." On the third ring, a familiar voice burst through, trembling with relief. "Amaya, you make it home all right?" A tired smile touched Amaya's lips. "Yeah, Mama, I'm home. Just walked in the door." There was a pause, then the inevitable worry. "You sure everything's okay? I've been thinking about those missing hunters all afternoon. Did you hear anything else?" Amaya sank into the couch, one leg tucked under her, staring at the shadows gathering along the corners of the trailer. "Yeah, I ran into Dante and the others at the gas station. They're all looking for Marcus. He's been missing for a few days now." She hesitated, then added quietly, "They think something happened to him. They also think there is something out in the woods." Her mother's voice sharpened, anxiety threading through every word. "Something? Like what?" Amaya tilted her head back against the couch, eyes closing. "Could be nothing, could be a bear. They don't really know. They just said the woods feel different lately." There was a long silence before her mother spoke again, her voice firmer now, almost pleading. "I don't like this, Amaya. If the woods don't feel right, maybe you should come back to Augusta for a few days. Stay here until they figure it out." Amaya opened her eyes, staring up at the ceiling, tracing the faint water stains that spread across the panels like veins. "Mama, I'm fine. I don't need to come back. I've got Roscoe, and I'm not planning on wandering off into the deep woods. I'll just stick close to the house. It's probably just a couple of accidents. I'll be all right." Her mother's sigh came heavy through the line. "I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling. You keep that dog close, you hear me? And if anything feels strange, anything, you come back here." Amaya softened, her lips curving faintly. "I will, Mama. I promise. I'm just going to relax for a bit. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? A reluctant pause. Then, all right, just be careful, Amaya. I don't want to hear about you on the news. A laugh escaped her, quiet and tired. You won't. Love you, Mama. Love you too. Call me if anything happens. The call ended. Amaya let the phone slip from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the couch beside her. She leaned back into the cushions, staring blankly at the ceiling. The trailer groaned softly as the storm gathered outside, the wind howling against the thin walls. For a long moment, she just listened, to the hum of the fridge, to the thrum of her own heartbeat, to the storm tightening around her home. But beneath it all, she swore she could hear something else, a faint metallic clicking, out there, in the dark. Chapter 7. The television sputtered to life with a soft click, its glow spilling across the dim living room. Amaya leaned forward on the couch, elbows resting on her knees, her phone forgotten at her side. The steady hum of the fridge filled the silence until the familiar voice of the local news anchor broke through. In other news, the man's tone was measured, professional, but grave. Authorities in Sparta, Georgia, are continuing their search for missing hunters. This marks the 6th disappearance in the past 2 weeks, leading to growing concern in the community. Local officials are advising caution for anyone venturing into the woods and encourage residents to stay alert. The camera cut to shaky footage of deputies combing through the trees, men in bright vests moving through the shadows with flashlights, their beams piercing the gloom, but finding nothing. A woman's face followed, her eyes red, clutching a photo to her chest as she spoke into the microphone. Please, if anyone has seen him, please call the police. Marcus has a family. He wouldn't just disappear like this. Amaya's frown deepened. Her fingers drummed restlessly against her thigh as she listened. Every word felt heavier than the last, pressing down on her chest until her breathing came shallow. The woods had always been hers. Safe, familiar, a place where she felt more herself than anywhere else. But now, listening to the newscaster's somber cadence, it felt as though the trees themselves had shifted into strangers, hiding something malevolent beneath their branches. Her mind drifted back to the gas station. Dante's too-wide grin, Jamal's uneasy whisper, Mike's forced joke. The look in their eyes when they spoke of Marcus. Something's out there. Thunder cracked across the sky, a violent rumble that rattled the thin walls of the trailer. The sound made her jump, and she turned her head toward the window. Raindrops had begun to spatter against the glass, trailing down in thin streams as the storm finally arrived. On the screen, the news anchor had already moved on, droning about city council meetings and local sports scores. Amaya reached for the remote, her thumb pressing the button with finality. The screen blinked dark, leaving her in the reflection of her own face. Tired, anxious, framed by the storm outside. For a moment, she just sat there, listening to the rain intensify, the storm circling tighter. The silence inside was deeper now, heavier without the distraction of voices. She leaned back onto the couch, staring at the black mirror of the television, her thoughts racing. Eventually, with a weary sigh, she pushed herself to her feet and headed toward the bedroom. But the unease feeling followed, clinging to her skin like the humidity in the air. The storm was only just beginning, and Amaya couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't the only thing pressing in on her home tonight. Chapter 8. The storm broke fully sometime after midnight. Thunder rolled through the woods like cannon fire, rattling the thin walls of Amaya's trailer. Rain battered the windows in sheets, the wind shrieking through the trees outside, bending them until their shadows danced like twisted arms. Each flash of lightning lit the room in harsh white, gone just as quickly, leaving the darkness deeper than before. Amaya stirred in bed, rolling onto her side. The mattress groaned faintly. She tried to sink back into sleep, but something, an unfamiliar sound, dragged her up from its edges. A creak. Not the trailer shifting, not the wind. Something deliberate, heavy, coming from her porch. Her eyes shot open, breath shallow. For a moment, she just lay there, straining her ears against the storm. Another creak. Slow. Weight pressing wood. She sat up, groggy but alert, pushing damp hair from her face. "Roscoe?" Her voice was a soft call, hopeful but edged with unease. No answering bark, just the roar of rain and the deep growl of thunder. She slid out of bed, bare feet whispering against the floorboards, and moved cautiously toward the front door. Her hand lingered on the lock for a moment before turning it. The door creaked open, and the storm's fury slammed into her, the cold sting of rain on her skin, the wind whipping her nightshirt against her legs. The porch stretched before her, gleaming wet under the stormlight. The metal food bowl sat untouched by the door, its surface collecting water, the kibble inside soggy and swollen. Her stomach tightened. "Roscoe!" she called, louder now, her voice lost to the thunder. Nothing. Only silence. Then, the sound of metallic clicking. Faint, erratic. It carried from the tree line, hidden beyond the sheets of rain. Not the shuffle of paws, not the rustle of a deer breaking brush. This sound was different. It had a coldness to it, like grinding gears, or bones rattling together in some unnatural rhythm. Amaya froze, her breath clouding in the wet air. She squinted into the trees, lightning splitting the sky for an instant, and in that flash, the woods looked deeper, darker, as though something massive had stepped back just before the light touched it. Her heart slammed in her chest. "What is that?" she whispered, the words ripped away by the storm. Branches cracked, leaves shifted, something moved, deliberate, heavy. Footsteps, coming closer. Her pulse spiked. She backed toward the door, eyes never leaving the tree line. The clicking grew louder, closer, steady now, as if whatever stalked her had decided to stop hiding. "Roscoe?" she called again, voice almost breaking, desperate now. "Dante? Is that you?" No answer, only the shape. A tall silhouette, blending in with the rain, emerging between the trees. For an instant, lightning revealed it. A towering figure, rain coursing off something smooth and unnatural, the faintest shimmer clinging to its outline before vanishing into shadow again. Her instinct screamed. Every nerve fired with the same command. Run. Amaya stumbled back, fumbling with the knob. She yanked the door shut and threw the deadbolt, the sharp click deafening in the silence that followed. Her chest heaved, breath ragged. She pressed her back against the door, the pounding of her heart louder than the thunder. Outside, the storm raged, but beneath it, she could still feel the stranger. Closer. Watching. Waiting. Chapter 9. Amaya's hands shook as she punched in the alarm code, the keypad's soft beeps cutting through the storm outside. A green light blinked, signaling the system was armed, but it gave her little comfort. She stood there for a moment, back pressed to the door, listening. The faint clicking noise she'd heard still seemed to echo in her skull, threading itself beneath the thunder and rain. She moved toward the living room window, lifting the curtain with 2 fingers, peering out into the yard. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting everything beyond into smears of black and silver. The storm hadn't broken fully, but the worst of it was past. Now the drops fell in steady sheets, soaking the earth, masking anything that might be out there. Nothing moved, just the sway of trees, the restless churn of shadows. Still, her skin prickled with the same awareness she'd felt on the porch. Her sanctuary had changed. The woods weren't hers anymore. They belonged to something else. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to move. Her laptop sat on the coffee table in the living room, dark screen waiting. She opened it with a snap, the glow lighting her face as she navigated to the security feed. Her fingers trembled against the trackpad, the storm's reflection flickering in her wide eyes. The cameras showed only darkness, thick, wet, relentless. The yard was an ocean of shadows, the rain coming down in silver sheets that blurred everything. She stared at the live feed, waiting, praying for Roscoe's bounding figure to appear. But the screen remained empty, except for the storm. Her throat tightened. She pushed herself off the sofa and strode quickly down the narrow hall to her bedroom. The nightstand drawer slid open with a familiar weight, and she reached inside. Her fingers closed around cold steel. She pulled out her Glock, the matte black catching a faint flash of lightning through the window. With a sharp click, she racked the slide, checking the chamber. The sound was both comforting and damning. It meant she expected to use it. "Come on, Roscoe." Her voice cracked, low and anxious, as she pressed the pistol close to her chest. "Where are you, boy?" She returned to the living room, setting the gun carefully on the coffee table before sinking onto the sofa. The laptop screen glowed faint blue, casting her face in shadows. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, eyes locked on the flickering feed. Every few seconds, her gaze darted to the front door, her body taut with anticipation. Minutes flew by, the storm raging outside like a living thing. She couldn't just sit there waiting. With a sharp inhale, she clicked off the live feed and scanned through the saved footage, scrolling until the timestamp reached earlier in the day. Noon. Bright sunlight filled the yard. The scene contrasted to the storm-racked night. There was Roscoe, tail wagging, ears perked, his whole body quivering with excitement as a cluster of deer burst into the clearing. His bark was sharp, playful, before he gave chase, disappearing after them toward the trees. Amaya's lips twitched into a brief, fleeting smile. That was him, her boy. But then her brow furrowed. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing on the screen. The deer weren't moving lazily through the brush as usual. They were running. Hard. Heads low, muscles straining, their bodies scattered in frantic bursts of motion. Their eyes flashed wide, panicked, as if something had driven them out. Amaya froze, her hand hovering above the keyboard. They weren't running from Roscoe. He hadn't even seen them yet when they bolted through the yard. They were already running, in fear, from something else. Her chest went tight. She rewound again, watching closely this time, eyes darting to the edge of the frame. For a split second, as the last deer passed, the feed caught a blur in the tree line. Not an animal, not any shape she recognized. A ripple, almost like water bending in the air, there and gone. The video jumped with static, as though the camera itself flinched. Amaya's stomach dropped. Her eyes flicked to the live feed again, the same tree line now shrouded in rain. She reached for the Glock, her palms slick with sweat. The storm rattled the windows. Chapter 10. The storm showed no mercy. Rain lashed against the windows in steady sheets, blurring the world outside into a shifting gray mass. Thunder rolled low and consistently. Amaya sat hunched on the sofa, her laptop's glow painting her face in pale light. The security camera live feed flickered with static, the image shifting between the empty yard, the slick shine of the porch, and the restless sway of the trees. She stared, unblinking, waiting for Roscoe's familiar shape to bound into view. But the screen gave her nothing. Only rain, only shadows. Her Glock lay on the coffee table in front of her, its cold weight a silent promise. She had told herself she would not sleep, that she couldn't afford to, but her body had other plans. Her muscles ached from tension, her eyes burned from strain. Every blink lingered a fraction longer than the last. She shifted, forcing her spine straighter, but the warmth of the sofa wrapped around her like a trap. The storm's rhythm became hypnotic, the steady drum of rain on the roof and the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Each sound waved together until it was no longer noise, but a lullaby. Her hand slipped from her thigh to her lap. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed, snapped open, then drifted shut again. Stay awake, she told herself, just a little longer. But the unease pressing at her chest, the gnawing fear that something was out there, began to dissolve beneath the crushing weight of exhaustion. Her head tilted against the back of the sofa, her lips parting with a quiet sigh. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the yard in a harsh flash. For that single instant, a shadow broke against the tree line, tall, sturdy, foreign. But by the time thunder cracked and darkness fell again, Amaya was already slipping under. The screen glowed on her face, the rain-blurred feed still watching. Amaya drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware of what lies waiting in the storm. Chapter 11. The morning came reluctantly, a pale gray light filtering through storm-streaked windows. The rain had dwindled to a soft drizzle, mist clinging to the pines beyond her clearing. Amaya stirred on the sofa, neck stiff, back aching. The hum of the refrigerator and the soft patter of water dripping from the eaves greeted her as she blinked into consciousness. Then she remembered. The bowl left untouched, the mechanical clicking in the dark, that shadow on the edge of the trees. Her heart skipped. She sat up too fast, angry at herself. Damn it, I fell asleep. Roscoe was still gone. She pulled the laptop onto her knees, her fingers trembling against the trackpad as she opened the live feed. Hours of footage spilled past in silence, sheets of rain, the porch bathed in sickly light, the endless sway of the trees. Come on, Roscoe, she whispered, fast-forwarding through the storm. Her voice cracked against the stillness. Where are you, boy? Then something. Her finger froze over the keyboard. Near the edge of the porch, just out of the camera's reach, a shadow shifted. A smudge of movement, blurred by rain, the outline immoral, too tall, too deliberate. Amaya rewound the footage, leaning closer, eyes narrowing. The figure never stepped fully into frame. It lingered just beyond the camera's sight, moving with an unnatural patience, as though it knew where the blind spot was. What the? She whispered, throat dry. She replayed it again, squinting through the static and blur. It wasn't Dante. It wasn't any of the hunters. She knew the way men carried themselves. This was something else, something predatory. Her stomach twisted. Who the hell are you? She muttered, though she already knew it wasn't anyone she'd ever met. With a sharp snap, she closed the laptop, the sound echoing too loud in the empty trailer. She rubbed both hands over her face, dragging in a long, shaky breath. The morning was too quiet, unnaturally so. The drizzle outside didn't soothe. It pressed down like a suffocating weight. Enough waiting. She stood and crossed the living room, her bare feet silent against the floorboards. She walked down the hallway to her bedroom. Her gaze flicked to the dresser in her bedroom. A hunting knife, broad, sharp, the handle worn and smooth from years of use, was waiting there. She sheathed it at her hip, tightening the strap with practiced fingers. She pulled her orange hoodie over her head, the fabric soft. She adjusted the hood until the shadows framed her face. She grabbed her gun holster and box of 9mm bullets from her nightstand drawer. Finally, she grabbed her camo shoulder bag and flung it over her shoulders. She left her bedroom and headed back into the living room. Amaya walked back to the coffee table, picked up the Glock, and placed it in the gun holster on her hip. She placed the box of ammo into her shoulder bag. She sat on the sofa and pulled on her boots. She pulled the laces tightly, doubled and knotted them. She took a heavy sigh, pushed herself off the sofa, and headed for the front door. Amaya paused at the door, hand on the knob, listening to the drizzle outside. Her pulse drummed steadily but hard, her breath shallow. Something had been out there last night, watching, waiting. With a final deep breath, she unlocked the door and stepped out into the morning. Chapter 12. The front door creaked open, the sound cutting through the silence like a warning. Amaya stepped onto the porch, her boots sinking into damp wood slick with last night's storm. The air was heavy, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine needles. Mist clung low across the clearing, veiling the tree line where the forest began its endless reach. Her eyes drifted immediately to the food bowl by the steps. The kibble sat swollen with rain, untouched, gray water pooling at the bottom. Roscoe hadn't come back. Her throat tightened. "Roscoe!" she called, her voice slicing through the stillness. "Roscoe, come here, boy!" Her words echoed across the clearing, fading into the trees. No bark, no shuffle of paws, just silence, broken only by a crow's cry somewhere deeper in the woods. She glanced at the bowl again, her chest heavy with dread. Roscoe has never stayed gone this long, not overnight, not in a storm. The dog was loyal, protective, always circling back. Every instinct in her body screamed that something was wrong. But leaving him out there alone? Impossible. She adjusted her hoodie, pulling the fabric tighter around her face, and took a steady breath. The weight of the Glock at her hip pressed against her side as she drew it, checking it once more. She popped the magazine free, confirmed the rounds, then slid it back in with a metallic snap. A round added in the chamber with a sharp click that echoed louder than thunder. Satisfied, she holstered it. Her fingers brushed the knife she'd strapped to her belt. The blade gleamed faintly in the weak morning light. A simple tool, sharpened to a vicious edge. She hooked it securely to the back loop of her pants, where her hand could find it quickly if she needed. The woods waited for her, a black wall of dripping branches and tangled undergrowth. She had no idea what she would find beyond that threshold. Her dog, frightened but alive, a carcass left by a predator, or something else entirely, something she couldn't name. Her pulse thrummed hot in her ears. "All right," she whispered to herself, voice hard, determined. "If something's out there, I'll be ready." She stepped off the porch, boots squelching in the wet grass, eyes locked on the shadows beneath the trees. Each step felt heavier than the last, but there was no turning back. She headed in the direction she saw Roscoe run while chasing the deer yesterday afternoon. It was also the same direction she saw the figure last night. In the mud, beneath a scatter of washed-down leaves, impressions pressed deep into the earth. At first glance, They might have been mistaken for boot tracks. But crouching down, pushing the leaves aside with trembling fingers, Amaya's breath caught. They were footprints. Large, too large, human-like in shape, the arches deep, the heel narrow, the spread of toes wide. But each toe ended not in a rounded tip, but in a gouge, sharp, curved, like claws had been driven into the mud. The fifth toe on each footprint is off to the side. The prints were fresh, edges clean. The rain didn't have time to wash it away. Her stomach twisted. What the hell left these? The words escaped in a whisper, barely audible over the drizzle. Her hand trembled as she pulled her phone from her pocket. She snapped a picture, the screen glowing stark against the misty gray. Amaya's thumb flew across the screen. She pulled up Dante's contact, her fingers tapping out a quick message. I need you to see this. I found strange tracks in my yard. She attached the photo, her reflection staring back from the damp screen, eyes wide, jaw tight. Her thumb hovered before she hit send. For the first time since last night, she realized something terrifying. Whatever had been on her property wasn't just passing through. It had come close. Too close. She hit send. Her eyes shifted back to the prints in the mud, unnatural, malformed things. Almost human, but not. Each claw mark gouged into the soil as if whatever had left them had pressed down with deliberate weight. Her phone buzzed suddenly, snapping her out of her spiral. The screen lit up with a message from Dante. Dante typed, "What in the world? Where did you find these?" Amaya's breath hitched. Her fingers flew across the screen. Amaya typed back, "On my property, near the tree line. Have you ever seen anything like this?" She hit send, her pulse racing as she waited. The drizzle turned into a steady patter again, droplets striking the mud around the prints, threatening to blur them out of existence. Her gaze darting between the trees and her phone. Seconds stretched. Too long. Finally, the reply came. Dante typed, "No, that does not look like any animal I know. It looks human, but I have never seen a human with claws at the end of their toes." A second message followed right after. Dante typed, "Maybe it is Bigfoot." Amaya stared at the screen, her brow tightening. A flicker of annoyance cut through her nerves. Amaya typed back, "Dante, OMG." She shook her head, a quiet huff slipping out under her breath. But then, despite herself, the corner of her mouth pulled slightly upward. It was ridiculous, completely ridiculous, and for a second, just a second, the tight grip of fear around her chest loosened. The woods didn't feel quite as suffocating. It almost felt normal again, like this was just another morning. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then returned. Dante typed, "I'm just joking." Dante added a smiley face emoji. The small hint of a smile lingered, faint but real. Then another message came through. Dante typed, "Do you want me to come over and take a closer look?" The warmth faded as quickly as it came. Her eyes drifted back to the prints in the mud, to the unnatural shape of them, the clawed impressions pressed deep into the earth. Reality settled back in. Her stomach tightened. She could almost hear his voice in the words, half concern, half curiosity. But her throat tightened at the thought of him standing here, seeing her house, seeing how rattled she was. She hated the vulnerability clawing its way up her spine. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She took a slow breath, forcing her anxiety back down into the pit of her stomach. Amaya typed back, "Not right now. I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks, though." The dots blinked, paused, vanished, then returned. Dante typed, "All right, but if you need me, call me." That's some weird shit, Amaya. She exhaled, shoulders sagging. Yeah, she muttered, though no one could hear her. Weird. She slipped the phone into her pants pocket, her hand brushing against the Glock's holster out of habit. She glanced one more time at the muddy impressions, feeling the weight of them burn into her memory. The woods were calling, and somewhere in their depths, Roscoe was waiting, or something else was. Chapter 13. The woods swallowed her whole as she stepped off the clearing. The crunch of wet leaves and brittle twigs underfoot echoed far too loudly in the silence, each step reminding her how alone she really was. Its mist-shrouded maw waiting, shadows stretching long and deceptive. Every rustle of leaf, every sway of branch made her paranoid. "Come on, Roscoe," she whispered under her breath, her voice barely inaudible over the mist's whisper. Her throat felt dry despite the damp air. "Where are you, boy?" Her eyes swept the dense underbrush. The late morning drizzle had thickened the air into a damp curtain, clinging to her skin and muting every sound. Familiar paths looked different today, darker, more tangled. The forest had a way of shifting after a storm, but this wasn't the weather. This was something else. The air carried a weight, an unnatural hush, as if the trees themselves were holding their secrets close. The mud clung to the soles of her boots, the sound sticky and wet. And in her mind, the thought struck hard, unwanted but unshakable. If the rain hadn't washed the tracks away, then whatever had made them was still nearby. And it was watching. Every few steps, she glanced over her shoulder, that prickling sensation crawling up the back of her neck of being watched, stalked. The silence that followed pressed heavy, thick with anticipation. She forced herself forward, boot sinking into the mud, then another, each step deliberate. Then a branch snapped at her left. She froze instantly, her hand snapping to the Glock at her side. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. The sound was deliberate, too sharp to be wind. "Roscoe?" she called out, her voice steady but laced with tension. A rustle followed. Footsteps, heavy, uneven, moving toward her. Her breath hitched as a figure broke from behind a slick pine trunk. For a split second, she nearly raised the gun, but then her heart jumped. "Jamal?" The man looked like he'd been dragged through hell. His camo jacket was torn, his face scratched and drawn tight with fear. Mud streaked his clothes, and his eyes darted from shadow to shadow, as though expecting the trees themselves to attack. "Amaya," he whispered hoarsely, relief flickering in his voice. "You gotta be careful out here." She holstered the gun, but didn't relax. Her nerves buzzed like live wires. "Jamal, what are you doing out here? Are the other guys with you?" He shook his head quickly, shoulders trembling. "Nah, I came alone. I'm looking for Marcus. He's still missing, but..." His voice cracked. "I found him." Amaya's chest tightened. She took a step closer, eyes searching his haunted face. "What do you mean? Where? Did you see Roscoe?" Jamal's gaze darted to the trees, as if afraid they might overhear. His lips trembled. "Roscoe's missing?" He shook his head. "No, I didn't see him, but I saw something else out here, Amaya." Her throat went dry. "What did you see?" He swallowed hard, lowering his voice. "I don't know how to explain it. It's like something was watching me. Big, human-like, but not human. But it could vanish, like it turned invisible. I know how that sounds, but I swear to God, I saw it moving between the trees, like the air itself was bending." A chill skated across her skin. Her voice came out hushed, trembling. Invisible? Jamal, I believe you. Last night I was on my porch. I saw a shape in the rain, a shimmer, see-through. It wasn't natural. Jamal's eyes widened, confirmation sparking terror in them. So, you saw it too. Jesus, it isn't in my head. He shook his head violently, his words spilling fast. You should have seen what it did to Marcus, and not just him. I found others, animals, hunters, skinned, hung up like trophies. God help me, it strips them clean. Amaya's stomach turned, bile stinging her throat. She could almost see it, the hanging flesh, the glistening bones, the horror hidden in these trees. Her pulse quickened, but when her gaze flicked back toward the distant clearing, the thought of Roscoe tugged her forward again. I gotta find Roscoe, she said, her voice low but firm. He's out here somewhere, and if what you're saying is true. Jamal stepped forward, desperation tightening his face. Then we get out of here. Now. We go to town, tell the sheriff, bring backup. You can't stay out here. Amaya shook her head, steel in her voice. No, I can't leave him. Not out here, not like this. Damn it, Amaya, it's not safe. Jamal's voice cracked, half a plea, half frustration. She stared at him, her jaw set, eyes hard. Then just tell me where you found the bodies. I will go see if one of the animals is Roscoe while you go back in town and get help. His mouth opened, then shut. Finally, his shoulders sagged, and he let out a long, shuddering sigh. Amaya. His voice broke. I'll show you. I can't let you go alone. Lightning flashed through the canopy, briefly painting the forest white. Jamal flinched. Amaya adjusted her grip on the Glock, nodding once. Together, they pushed deeper into the woods. The shadows closed behind them like a gate, and the silence grew heavier, thick with unseen eyes. Chapter 14. The woods were unnervingly still, every step muffled by damp leaves and thick mud. Amaya's boots pressed softly into the earth, her eyes darting left and right, every shifting shadow drawing her hand closer to her Glock. Beside her, Jamal moved like a man already haunted, his breaths shallow, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning the trees as if he expected them to reach for him. Then, suddenly, he stopped. His hand shot up, palm open, a silent command. Wait! He hissed, voice tight. His trembling finger pointed toward a cluster of trees ahead. Amaya's nostrils flared before she even saw them. A sharp, metallic tang filled the air, thick, dense, unmistakable. Blood, fresh and heavy. Her stomach turned. She followed Jamal forward, step by step, until the scent thickened into something gagging. Then she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. Bodies, hanging from the branches like grotesque ornaments. Animals, deer, raccoons, and wild boars were dangling upside down, skinned clean, their raw muscles glistening in the weak daylight. But worse were the human shapes, suspended higher, strung up by crude hooks and cord. Hunters. Their flesh peeled away, their chests flayed open, every strip of skin carved with precision. They had been decapitated. Marcus, Carl, others. Oh my God, Amaya whispered, her voice breaking as she stumbled a step closer. Her throat constricted, bile rising. What happened here? Jamal choked back vomit, his hand clamping over his mouth as tears pooled in his eyes. His whole body shook. This is evil, he rasped, voice breaking. Whatever did this, it isn't just hunting, it's enjoying it. The words barely left his lips before a sound cut through the silence. The metallic clicking noise she heard last night, low and rough. Amaya froze, eyes wide, breath catching in her chest. "You hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Jamal's head snapped toward the trees, his face drained of color. "Yeah," he breathed, his voice cracked. It's close." Something unseen shifted through the branches. The shadows rippled unnaturally, bending and warping like heat waves in the air. "Amaya." Jamal's voice was low in a whisper. It trembled with desperation. "Let's go. Now." Her hand tightened on her Glock. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, let's go." They began to retreat, each step painfully slow, careful not to disturb the dead leaves beneath their boots. Every muscle screamed to run, but they knew whatever was stalking them would hear the smallest sound. Then it happened. A branch cracked, loud and sharp. Amaya's blood went cold. The forest seemed to lean closer, holding its breath. Jamal's face twisted in terror. His chest heaved. His voice broke into a scream. "Run, Amaya! Run!" Before she could react, Jamal shoved her hard, sending her stumbling back through the brush. She hit the ground, rolling as her instincts screamed at her to move. Her eyes locked on him for one last, desperate moment. Jamal turning toward the trees, his hands shaking, his face twisted with defiance and dread. Something was with them now. Chapter 15. The pounding of their feet as they ran grew sharper, louder, until it felt like it was crawling across Amaya's skin. Jamal's breaths came ragged, his rifle trembling in his hands as he whipped it toward every shifting shadow. A ripple in the rain shimmered before them, bending the light, distorting the trees. The shimmer solidified, and suddenly, there it was. The thing stepped forward. Towering nearly 7 feet, it was a monster. Its frame was lean, yet impossibly strong, long limbs corded with muscle beneath a strange mesh that clung to its mottled skin, an alien web of dark greens and bruised blues. Segmented armor plated its chest and thighs, each slab etched with claw-like scars, trophies from battles long past. A thick braid of locks hung from its skull, bound with metallic clasps that clinked softly as it moved. Every step radiated cold intelligence. A soft hum filled the air. The shoulder cannon rose, sleek and mechanical. The triangular pattern of its laser leaps forward, locking onto Jamal's forehead. 3 red dots. Jamal's eyes went wide with terror, but his fear twisted into fury. Jamal screamed, raw and furious. "You son of a bitch! You killed my friend!" He fired wildly, muzzle flashes ripping through the gloom. Bullets tore into bark, ricocheted off the phantom's armor with sharp metallic sparks. It didn't even flinch. The phantom's cannon whirred to life, a deep mechanical hum filling the forest. 3 red dots converged into a triangle across Jamal's forehead. He ducked, diving behind a tree for cover as the plasma bolt seared past, vaporizing bark in a burst of smoke and fire. "Move, Jamal!" Amaya screamed, but he didn't hear her. He popped out from behind the trunk, firing again, desperate. The sound of his rifle was swallowed by the roar of the forest, by the phantom's deliberate steps. And then it was gone, vanished in a blur. Jamal spun, chest heaving. His rifle shook violently in his grip. "Where?" A thunderous thud landed behind him. The phantom had leapt, landing with terrifying grace. Its wrist blades extended with a metallic shriek, gleaming with cruel precision. Jamal barely turned before the twin blades slashed across him. Blood fanned out in a spray, spattering the ground and streaking the trees. His scream cut short as the phantom's weapon tore through him, dropping him to his knees. He gasped once, shuddering, before his body went limp. Amaya froze in horror, her hand flying to her mouth. She stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. Her lungs burned as if she'd forgotten how to breathe. Jamal's body hit the ground with a wet thud, blood pooling in the mud. The phantom tilted its head, studying its work, its mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Amaya's instincts roared to life. Run! And without another thought, she turned and bolted into the trees, her pulse hammering, her every step echoing the single truth clawing in her chest. Roscoe was still out here. But so was it. Chapter 16. Amaya bolted, her boots tearing into the mud, lungs burning as she ripped through the underbrush. Branches lashed against her arms, rain stung her face, but she didn't dare stop. Behind her came the guttural clicks, deeper now, more deliberate, the sound of the hunt closing in. The phantom turned sharply, its head tilting as it locked onto her. A sudden whine rose in the air. The shoulder cannon snapped into place, the triangular laser dancing across the wet trees until it centered on her back. The weapon shrieked, a plasma bolt ripping through the air. The blast struck a tree just beside her, exploding tree bark and leaves outward in a fiery shower. Amaya screamed, the heat licking her skin as she dove forward, rolling through the mud. "Keep moving," she panted between ragged gasps, forcing her legs to obey. "Keep running." Another high-pitched hum built behind her. She spun just in time to see the second bolt streaking toward her. It slammed into the ground at her heels, the earth erupting in a blast of dirt and fire that lifted her off her feet. The shockwave propelled her forward as she scrambled over a fallen log, mud splattering her face. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst. Every nerve screamed to stop, but stopping meant death. Then the world shifted beneath her, the ground crumbled, roots snapping under her boots. She had only enough time for one strangled cry before gravity seized her. She tumbled violently down a steep hill, her body rolling through mud and stones, sharp rocks tearing at her arms and legs. Branches clawed at her clothes as the world spun in a dizzy blur. She landed with bone-rattling force at the bottom, her left shoulder slamming into the ground with a sharp crack. Agony lit her nerves on fire. Amaya gasped, clutching her arm as pain radiated outward in throbbing waves. Every breath stabbed her ribs, shallow and desperate. She tried to lift herself, but her shoulders screamed in protest, her vision swimming. Above her the storm rumbled. And then, silence. The clicks returned, echoing from the top of the hill. She turned her head, dread seizing her throat. Through the rain, she saw it. The phantom stood at the ridge, framed by lightning. Its dreadlocked silhouette loomed like a nightmare given flesh, the shoulder cannon glowing faintly, targeting systems alive with a predator's patience. Then it moved. With inhuman grace, it leapt from the hilltop, landing in a crouch at the base with a bone-shaking thud. Mud and water splattered outward as its massive form straightened, the twin wrist blades sliding out with a metallic hiss. Amaya's chest heaved. She removed her shoulder bag and pressed herself against the dirt, mind racing, every instinct screaming at her to move, to hide, to do something. "Think, Amaya," she whispered, her voice breaking, panic clawing at her throat. "Come on, think." The Glock was still strapped at her side. The knife still hung on her belt. Her eyes darted to a massive oak nearby, its gnarled roots yawning open at the base. Shelter, maybe cover, could be enough. Biting down against the pain in her shoulder, Amaya clawed forward through the mud, every inch a battle as the phantom's shadow fell across her. The hunt wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Chapter 17. Amaya's breath tore ragged through her throat, her chest rising and falling in harsh bursts as she pressed her back against the oak. Her Glock shook in her hands, sweat and blood slicking her grip. Her heartbeat was deafening, pounding against her ribs as though trying to break free. It came closer. The phantom's footsteps thudded against the soaked earth, each one deliberate, each one meant to remind her that it was in control. She sucked in a deep breath, forcing her trembling body to act. She rounded the tree, teeth clenched, and fired. The Glock cracked like thunder, bullets slamming into the phantom's unarmored shoulder. It staggered, jerking slightly, the impact tearing through muscle with a wet, meaty snap. From the wound burst a spray of phosphorescent green mist. The droplets shimmered unnaturally, glowing like liquid fireflies in the dark woods. For a flicker of a second, hope surged through her, proof that the monster could bleed, that it wasn't invincible after all. "Come on," she hissed, firing again. "Just go down!" But the phantom straightened, its towering frame absorbing the assault. The armor caught most of the rounds, sparks ricocheting off in flashes. With a guttural roar, it lunged. Amaya tried to roll aside, but it was too fast. A massive arm crashed into her shoulder. Pain detonated through her body as she was hurled backward, hitting the ground hard enough to rattle her teeth. The Glock slipped from her hand, clattering uselessly into the mud. She gasped, scrambling backward as its shadow loomed over her. Every nerve screamed that this was the end. Her hand brushed metal. The knife. She ripped it free from the loop at her back, gripping it so tight the hilt dug into her palm. The phantom cocked its head, mandibles flaring. Then in one swift motion, it flicked a gleaming circular disc. Amaya ducked instinctively. The blade tore past her, embedding deep in a tree trunk with a solid thunk. She barely had time to look up before its hand closed around her throat. The phantom lifted her easily, her feet kicking against the air as she choked for breath. Bright light erupted behind her eyes. In a blind frenzy, she drove the knife upward, burying it into the meat of its arm. The phantom snarled, recoiling just enough to release her. She collapsed to the ground, coughing, lungs burning. It came again. A blur of muscle moved with impossible speed. The backhand connected with a sickening crack, bone meeting flesh in a thunderous impact that sent a burst of pain through her skull. Amaya's head snapped sideways, the world spinning as she was thrown off her feet and slammed into the mud. The ground hit her like a wall, wet earth sucking at her clothes as her body skidded through the muck. A spray of blood and spit burst from her mouth, spotting the dirt in front of her. The taste filled her mouth, warm, coppery, thick enough to make her gag. Her jaw throbbed, already swelling, the skin split where the blow had landed. For a moment, she could only hear the rush of blood in her ears, the distant growl of the phantom above her, and the slow drip of crimson from her chin into the dark mud below. Amaya groaned. Her ribs ached with every breath. Each inhale was a knife of pain sawing through her chest. Mud clung to her cheek. Every nerve screamed at her to stay down, to let her battered body sink into the cold earth and stop fighting. But deep inside, something hotter than pain burned, a raw, furious will that refused to die. Her vision swam, spots of red and black clouding the edges, yet her jaw tightened. She pushed against the ground, fingers trembling, blood and dirt smeared together in her palm. She wasn't done. Not yet. "I can't," she rasped, the words shredding her throat as blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. Her voice was a broken whisper, soaked in pain and grit. Trembling, she clawed at the mud, nails caked with dirt and flecks of her own blood as she dragged herself upright. Her arms shook violently under her weight, muscles screaming. "I can't give up," she forced out, breath hitching as she rose to her knees. The world tilted and spun, streaks of red dripping from her chin onto her torn hoodie. Blood smeared across her hands, warm and slick, mingling with the mud that clung to her skin like a second layer. Every inch of her body begged for surrender, but her eyes burned with defiance, that same fire refusing to die even as her body trembled on the edge of collapse. The phantom advanced, each step heavy and deliberate, sending thick globs of mud splattering beneath its taloned feet. The ground quaked faintly with its weight, the stench of wet earth mixing with the copper taste of blood in the air. Its mandibles clicked in a rapid, hungry rhythm, strands of saliva stretching between them as it breathed. Faint sunlight glinted off the wet sheen of its armor, still streaked with red and green from the carnage. Every movement radiated purpose, as if it savored the terror bleeding off her as much as the hunt itself. Amaya swung wildly with her knife as the towering phantom closed in, her heart hammering so hard it drowned out everything else. The blade barely grazed its thigh, but it was enough flesh parted with a wet slice, and thick green blood sprayed across her hand. It was warm and slick, viscous like oil, covering her knuckles and dripping down her wrist in heavy streaks. The scent hit her next, metallic and sharp, with a faint chemical tang that didn't belong to anything human. The phantom jerked back, muscles tightening under its armored hide, a low guttural growl rumbling from deep within its chest. Its mandibles flexed wide in fury, strings of saliva stretching between them as its yellow eyes locked onto her. No longer just hunting, but enraged. The phantom roared, a sound so deep it rattled her bones. One clawed hand swept sideways, raking across her ribs with the force of a blade. The strike ripped through fabric and flesh alike, shredding her orange hoodie in a single violent motion. Threads snapped and curled as the cloth peeled away, her undershirt beneath it tearing open with a wet, meaty rip. The phantom's talons carved through skin, leaving deep, ragged gashes that gushed dark blood in rhythmic spurts. Amaya screamed, collapsing against a tree trunk, her breath breaking in sharp, panicked bursts as she clutched her side. Warm blood soaked her fingers, slick and hot, seeping between them while the remnants of her hoodie hung in tatters. Her vision blurred, her body weakening, but she forced herself upright, knife trembling in her grip. The phantom lunged again with murderous force. Mud and blood exploded beneath its feet as it closed the distance, the air itself seeming to tear around its massive frame. Its wrist blade shot upward, muscles rippled beneath its mottled hide as it drew back for the final strike, every movement precise, practiced, and brutal. Droplets of viscous green blood flung from its leg wound as it lunged, spattering across the ground like glowing embers. Its mandibles flared wide in anticipation. A guttural growl rose from deep within its chest, a sound that promised her end. She ducked low at the last second, the blade whistling inches above her head as she threw herself into the mud. The impact splashed cold filth across her face, but she rolled through it, driven by sheer survival. With a raw, animal howl, Amaya came up swinging. The knife carved upward in a brutal arc, biting deep into the phantom's abdomen. A thick, wet rip split the air, followed by a gush of luminous green blood that poured over her hand in hot, slippery waves. The stench hit immediately, thick enough to choke on. The phantom's muscles convulsed, its deep roar shaking the trees as coils of steaming entrails bulged against the wound. The glowing blood drenched her forearm, mixing with her own, the slick warmth clinging to her skin as the phantom staggered back, clutching at its torn stomach while a bubbling snarl rattled out of its chest. Amaya staggered to her feet, her legs trembling beneath her, the world tilting and swimming in a haze of pain. Blood streamed down her face, hot and sticky, blurring her vision until everything was reduced to shapes and shadows. Her chest heaved. Every breath was a ragged rasp that tasted of blood and dirt. Yet somewhere deep inside, beneath the agony, beneath the terror, something fierce still burned. With a scream that tore from the pit of her soul, raw and primal, she lunged forward. The knife slammed into the phantom's chest with a meaty crack and twisted, the steel vanishing up to the hilt. A burst of thick green blood erupted from the wound, splattering across her face and chest in heavy, steaming lines. The phantom convulsed, its body jerking violently as the blade shredded through flesh and sinew. A wet, bubbling growl rattled from its throat, blood spilling over its mandibles as its claws scraped at her shoulders, trying to pry her away. Amaya held on, pressing deeper, twisting the blade until she felt bone grind and give. The air filled with the stench of alien blood and the faint hiss of its dying breath as the phantom sagged forward, its weight collapsing against her, its heart shuddering in its final, broken rhythm. With a trembling groan, Amaya braced her hands against the phantom's chest and shoved. The phantom's massive body was heavy, its armor slick with blood and rain, but she forced with everything she had left. Bones in her shoulder screamed, her arms shaking as the hulking corpse rolled off her and hit the ground with a wet thud. She sucked in a lungful of thick air with the stench of copper and decay. Too weak to stand, she sat on her knees. She was drenched in blood, its and her own, every inch of her slick with gore. Her chest rose and fell in jagged bursts, each breath tearing through her lungs like broken glass. The wounds along her side burned hot, crimson spilling freely through the shredded fabric of her hoodie, dripping in thick rivulets down her hip. The phantom's blood coated her arms, painting her skin in streaks of glistening green and red. She looked down at the phantom's carcass, its body still faintly twitching, the deep gash in its chest oozing thick globs of bright green fluid that pooled beneath it. Gritting her teeth, she scooted closer to the body, reached down, and wrenched the knife free. The sound was a wet, sucking tear, followed by a sluggish pour of more green blood that splattered against her tattered clothes. The phantom's mandibles twitched once, a final spasm that sent a shiver crawling up her spine. Then, silence. Its body sagged, motionless, the faint gleam in its eyes fading to dull amber. It was over. Or at least, it should have been. Chapter 18. The phantom lay sprawled on its back, its massive frame sunken into the mud. For a moment, it looked finished, broken, dying. The stench of blood and death hung thick in the air, the ground beneath it glistening black with a mix of its own glowing green and Amaya's darker red. Its mandibles hung slack, thin strings of saliva and blood stretching between them. Then the monster twitched. Its chest rose in a jagged, spasming motion, the sound of its breath wet and rattling, like air forcing its way through a throat half filled with fluid. A low, gurgling growl bubbled up from deep within its chest as its body convulsed, muscles rippling beneath torn flesh. Slowly, agonizingly, it lifted its left arm, the massive limb quivering, drenched in blood and grime. Mud and gore slid off its armor as it struggled to move. Strapped to its wrist was a device, alien and intricate, its surface alive with motion. Strange red symbols pulsed and shifted, morphing into new shapes with every flash. Each symbol flared brighter than the last, casting a sickly red glow across the phantom's shredded torso. The soft beeps it emitted grew sharper, faster, drilling into the air with a sense of purpose that sent dread crawling down Amaya's spine. Her breath caught. Her heart hammered against her ribs as realization hit. The light reflected in her wide eyes, her face streaked with blood and fear. The thing wouldn't just die. It was preparing to take her with it. "Oh no," she whispered, her voice raw and broken, each word trembling through blood-streaked lips. Her face, caked in mud and smeared crimson, twisted with dawning horror. "No, you don't." The phantom's mandibles flared wide while he laid on his back, with his head turned to the side, staring at her. Its mandibles twitched in a motion that looked disturbingly close to a grin. Its eyes gleamed, feral, yellow, alive with grim satisfaction. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it felt like it might split her open. She forced herself upright with a strangled cry, the sound torn from somewhere deep in her gut. Pain ripped through her side, fiery and sharp, making her stumble. Her boots slipped in the mud slicked with blood and rain, but she caught herself, teeth clenched, breath ragged. Ahead, the monster's circular disc still quivered where it was buried in the tree, vibrating from the earlier throw. Rain streaked down her face, mixing with the sweat, blood and grime that clung to her skin. She staggered toward it, each step heavy and desperate. The ground sucked at her feet, the world narrowing to the rhythmic, maddening beeping growing faster behind her. With a hoarse grunt, she wrapped trembling fingers around the slick, serrated edge. The metal was cold and wet, sticky with alien blood. She yanked with all her strength. The blade tore free with a shriek of metal on wood, splinters bursting around her hand. Behind her, the beeping turned frantic, each tone sharper, faster, like the ticking heart of a bomb seconds from detonation. The phantom's chest heaved once, its mandibles curling again in a blood-soaked grin. Amaya didn't hesitate. She hobbles over to the fallen creature and raises the circular disc over her head and brings it down on the creature's arm with all the strength she has left. It cut through the rain like a scythe, droplets bursting apart in a silver mist along its razor edges. The impact sounded like wet bone shattering. A sickening, crunching snap echoed through the trees as the blade carved clean through its wrist, shearing flesh and tendon in a single, brutal stroke. The severed arm thudding into the mud with a heavy, meaty slap. The wrist device clattered beside it, still blinking, still screaming its frantic sequence of warning tones. Green blood burst from the stump in violent pulses. Amaya slams the disc on the device. It continues to beep, but much slower than before. Amaya slams the disc down again at the device, but it continues to beep. She falls back on the ground due to the pain and exhaustion and yells in frustration. The phantom's mandibles spread in a final spasm of fury and pain. A guttural, piercing cry ripped from deep within its chest, an unearthly wail that seemed to shake the forest itself. The sound rose and broke, fading into a wet gurgle as the light dimmed in its eyes. Then, at last, it was quiet. Its mandibles hung slack, twitching once before going still. The glowing green blood spread outward in bright, luminous rivers, mingling with the rainwater that ran in rivulets through the mud. Amaya began to cry. She could feel the strength draining from her body all at once. The rush of adrenaline that had kept her alive bled out of her veins like a dying flame, leaving behind only pain and exhaustion. Her chest heaved, each breath a ragged rasp that scraped her throat raw. She crawled forward through the mud, her trembling hands sinking into the cold, blood-soaked earth as she reached for the still beeping device. Beside it, the severed wrist twitched, fingers spasming faintly. The sight was grotesque. The tendons glistened where the blade had severed them, strings of muscle stretching and snapping as it jerked one last time. Amaya's stomach turned, but she pressed on. Her trembling hands scooped up the wristband, its alien surface slick and warm with blood. The strange metal hummed weakly beneath her touch, the glyphs still pulsing in uneven rhythm. For a moment, the lights flared brighter, then flickered. The beeps stuttered, losing their sharpness, their tempo faltering. Each symbol dimmed one by one, the sequence breaking apart, unfinished. The device let out a final, low tone, then went silent. The glow faded completely, leaving only the faint shimmer of blood across its surface. The last glyph, half illuminated, blinked weakly and died. Whatever detonation had been primed had failed. She rolled over onto her back and stared up at the sky. Mud and blood soaked into her torn hoodie as she clutched her bleeding side. The wound throbbed viciously beneath her hand, the sticky warmth of her own blood seeping between her fingers. Mud streaked her face, mixing with the dark smears of blood and rain, turning her skin to a mask of war and survival. Her clothes were soaked through, heavy, clinging to her like a second skin. A sound tore from her lips, half laugh, half sob, a raw, ragged sound that trembled with disbelief and exhaustion. "I should have stayed at Mama's house," she croaked, her voice rough, cracked, but edged with a flicker of defiance. Above her, the storm howled and raged, wind driving rain through the trees like needles. But Amaya laid there, trembling, breathing, alive. Her blood mingled with the phantom's blood in the mud, proof of a battle no one would ever believe. The hunter was dead, and she survived it. Chapter 19. The storm had softened to a steady drizzle, rain tapping against her like faint fingers. Above her, the sky stretched wide and colorless, a bleak gray canvas fractured by restless clouds drifting across it. Her chest heaved in uneven bursts, each breath shallow and painful, her ribs screaming from every inhale. Her entire body trembled, nerves raw, muscles twitching with the aftermath of adrenaline and agony. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, rainwater running down her cheeks, carrying streaks of dirt and blood with it. The cool drops slid into the cuts along her face, stinging sharply before fading into numbness. Her body ached to be still, to let go, to drift. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy, but something lighter, softer, wet leaves crunching beneath cautious feet. The sound came from the edge of the tree line. It was faint, like something small testing the silence. Her eyes snapped open, her pulse hammering violently against her chest. "What the hell?" she muttered, her voice ragged and barely more than breath. She rolled onto her stomach, her hands sinking into the cold muck for leverage. Pain ripped through her ribs and shoulder, sharp and white-hot, forcing a groan from deep within her chest. Then she froze. Between the dripping branches, a shape began to emerge, moving carefully. A faint, soft, mechanical clicking noise echoed through the trees, quick and deliberate, followed by a flash of movement that made the blood drain from her face. From the shadows, the air began to shimmer, rippling like rising heat. Raindrops bent unnaturally around an unseen form as its outline took shape. The distortion wavered, flickered, and then vanished completely, revealing another figure standing at the edge of the trees. Smaller than the one she had killed, about 5 feet tall, but no less terrifying. Its skin shimmered with shades of dark bronze and jade, slick beneath the rain, muscles coiling under the wet sheen like cables under tension. Leaner, as if built for precision rather than brute strength. Its chest rose and fell with sharp, deliberate breaths that sounded almost human. The younger phantom's body was laid bare, with no armor, just raw, predatory flesh clothed in fishnet. 4 mandibles flared outward, twitching as they clicked together in a rapid stutter that echoed through the clearing like bones snapping. It stopped at the edge of the battlefield, looking at the corpse of its fallen kin. The younger phantom stood still, its gaze locked on the lifeless shell, the yellow glow in its eyes flickering like embers before turning toward Amaya. Her blood turned to ice. She began crawling backward, her palms sliding through the thick, cold sludge. Mud smeared across her trembling hands and arms, mingling with red and green blood until it was impossible to tell which was which. Her breath came in shallow, broken gasps. I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raw and cracking. "He attacked me." The little phantom's head tilted slightly. Its unblinking yellow eyes burned with intelligence. Its mandibles clacked together again, sharp and deliberate, the sound colder than the rain. It took 1 step forward, then another, each footfall sinking into the mud with a sickening squelch. The ground trembled faintly beneath its weight. Amaya's body shook uncontrollably. She could see it now, that fury behind its eyes. Not just anger, rage, the kind that burned ancient. It reached down, massive hand curling around the circular disc, still half buried in the mud. Its claws traced along the weapon's edges, scraping the metal with a shrill. The gesture was almost reverent. Then, without ever looking away, it lifted the disc high, the greenish blood from its claws dripping across the weapon's spinning surface. "No," Amaya sobbed, shaking her head. Tears blurred her vision, hot against her cold, rain-soaked skin. "No, no, please." Her voice broke completely, desperation ripping through every word. Her wounds screamed with every movement, but her body refused to obey. She was trapped, broken, powerless. Except she still had her hunting knife she used to kill the larger phantom, but she was too weak to fight. The little phantom loomed over her, its locks slick and heavy with rain. Water coursed down its chest and arms, running in rivulets through the scars that marked its skin. Its mandibles spread wide, releasing a hiss that vibrated in her bones, low and guttural, like a warning growl before the kill. The disc rose higher. Its curved edge caught a dull shard of afternoon light, glinting through the rain like the blade of a guillotine. Amaya's strength finally gave out. Her body folded in on itself, racked with sobs. She closed her eyes, trembling as she braced for the inevitable. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt, each beat like a hammer against her ribs. Then came 3 sharp movements. Slash, slash, slash. The cuts seared into her right temple in blinding streaks of pain. Flesh parted under the blade, hot blood spilling instantly, washing down her face in dark rivulets. The metallic tang filled her mouth, stinging her tongue as it mixed with the rain and tears. She felt the ground shake as if something had fallen at her side, and then nothing. Silence filled the clearing like a held breath. Amaya kept her eyes closed, her body trembling, her breath catching in short, ragged bursts. She waited for the killing blow, waited for the tearing agony of claws splitting her open. But it never came. Time lost all meaning. Seconds might have stretched into minutes as the rain fell heavier, cooling her blood-slicked skin. Her pulse thudded painfully in her ears, and when she could no longer stand waiting, she forced her eyes open. The clearing was empty. The younger phantom was gone. So was the corpse of the larger one. Only the churned mud remained. The shallow sting of the 3 cuts across her brow pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, each throb sending fresh pain crawling across her skull. Amaya sagged back onto the ground, her body sinking into the cold mud. Every ounce of strength drained from her in a shuddering sigh. She was alive, though barely. Blood and rainwater mixed beneath her, spreading out in a murky halo that clung to her skin. Her hands were raw, her nails caked with dirt and dried blood, her pulse weak and uneven. Next to her lay the alien circular disc. The metal shimmered faintly under the gray light, rainwater beading along its serrated edge. Her blood streaked across its surface, dulling the silver gleam. The faint hum it emitted sounded almost alive, a low vibration that resonated through the ground. Amaya stared at it, chest rising and falling in weak, uneven breaths. The weapon looked heavy, ancient, purposeful. Did the smaller phantom leave it behind as a warning, or as a gift? The thought sent a chill crawling up her spine as the rain continued to fall, washing more of the blood into the earth. The mark on her forehead burned hotter now, not like a wound, but a brand. It radiated through her skull, a deep, steady ache that made her stomach twist. She could feel it under her skin, as if something unseen had claimed her. She had been spared. Amaya's breath rattled out, slow and broken. The sound was barely louder than the rain. Her whisper slipped into the misty air, part prayer, part curse. God, help me. Chapter 20. The forest was silent. For the first time since the nightmare began, there was no clicking, no plasma bolts searing the air, no guttural roars echoing between the trees. Only the sound of the rain easing into a soft drizzle, dripping from the branches above. Amaya stood unsteadily, every muscle in her body screaming as she pushed herself upright. Her left shoulder throbbed with fire, her ribs aching where claws had torn deep. She pressed one hand against the wound, warm blood seeping between her fingers, and sucked in a shaky breath. She had survived. Against all odds, she was still breathing. Her eyes drifted toward the ground near the tree line, where something dull caught the light. Half buried in the mud lay her camo shoulder bag, the fabric soaked and heavy, coated in grime. She walked toward it, her body trembling from exhaustion, each movement sending a jolt of pain through her battered ribs. Reaching it, she pulled the strap free from the muck and shook it weakly, clumps of mud splattering across her arms and face. The rain helped wash away the worst of it, revealing the dark fabric beneath, streaked with mud and blood. She walked back to the metal disc and picked it up. Its surface vibrated faintly in her hands, still warm. She slid it inside the bag. She saw the severed arm laying a few feet away. The wristband's red glow was now dim, and she placed it inside beside the weapon. She also placed her hunting deformed knife, still sticky with alien blood, in the bag. The objects clinked softly against each other before she pulled the flap closed. The weight of the bag felt unnatural now, as if it carried the echo of everything that had happened in that clearing. She began the long climb back up the hill. Each step sent bolts of pain through her legs, her muscles trembling and her ribs aching with every movement. Mud clung to her boots, thick and heavy, dragging at her feet with every stride. Her breath came in sharp, uneven bursts, the sound rough in the quiet aftermath of the storm. When she finally made it back to the top of the hill, she started limping toward home. The sky had darkened completely. The storm clouds had parted just enough for the moon to push through, its glow pale and cold against the horizon. The woods stretched before her in a maze of black silhouettes, wet leaves glistening like glass, and she now realized how far she still had to go. Hours passed in a blur of pain and stubborn will. Her breath rattled, her legs quivered beneath her, her blood leaving faint streaks on the slick leaves she brushed against. Then she heard voices. She froze where she stood. The sound came faintly at first, carried through the wet night air. Male voices, urgent, shouting over one another, echoing between the trees. Her heart stuttered, then leapt. She knew one of them. "Dante!" she whispered hoarsely, her throat raw and cracked from screaming. Somewhere ahead, another voice barked, sharp and commanding. "Everyone be quiet. I think I heard something." Relief surged through her like a second heartbeat. She pushed forward, every nerve screaming in protest. "Dante!" she cried, her voice breaking. The woods fell still for a moment. Then a familiar voice shouted back, disbelief breaking through it. "Amaya?" She stumbled for the darkness, her vision swimming, the world spinning around her. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beams of light slicing across her face. The trees were crowded with people now. Hunters, deputies, the Hancock County Police. The glare of their lights froze on her, gasps and murmurs rippling through the group as they took in her blood-soaked clothes, her face smeared. Dante was there, running toward her, his broad frame pushing through the crowd. She managed to have a weak smile before her knees gave out beneath her. He caught her just before she hit the ground, wrapping his arms around her trembling body. Her breath shuddered, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. The last of her strength drained away, the adrenaline fading, leaving only pain and emptiness. Her eyes fluttered once, then rolled back as darkness closed in. The rain fell softly around them, washing the blood from her face as everything slipped into black. Chapter 21. The hospital moved the way hospitals always do at night. Low, controlled, a rhythm of soft machinery and muffled footsteps that existed beneath the volume of ordinary living. The kind of quiet that was not actually quiet at all, but rather 1,000 small sounds stacked carefully on top of one another until they formed something that almost resembled peace. Tonight, that rhythm felt strained. Officer Dylan Riley moved through the halls with purpose. His boots struck softly against the polished floor, a measured heel to toe that had been trained into him over 2 decades of walking crime scenes and hospital corridors and places where death had recently visited and left its residue behind. He walked the same way in all of them, not fast, not slow, just steady. There was still dried blood on the edge of his sleeve, not his. He had not bothered to change. It had crusted brown against the cotton, a crescent-shaped smear just above his cuff where he had pressed his forearm against something he should not have pressed his arm against. There had been a lot of moments like that tonight, moments where you were moving too fast and too bothered to keep yourself clean. The woods had been full of them. He had not thought about the sleeve until he stepped through the automatic doors and felt the fluorescent lighting hit him, and by then it had been too late and too unimportant to do anything about. A few heads turned as he passed the nurse's station, not just because he was in uniform, though that was part of it. It was the stain. Eyes went to it the way eyes always went to things they recognized and wished they did not. One nurse, a heavy-set woman with silver-streaked braids and a name tag that read Patricia, slowed mid-step when she saw it. Her gaze flicked from the smear near his cuff to his face and back again. Her expression did not change, but something behind her eyes did. A small recalibration, a quiet noting of the fact that whatever had happened out there in the Sparta woodlands was still very much in progress, still bleeding into the edges of every ordinary thing. She forced herself to keep moving. Another nurse, younger, said something very quietly to the woman beside her. Riley did not catch the words. Neither of them smiled at him. He was nearly to the turn that would take him toward room 115 when the voice came. "Officer Riley." It cut through the corridor cleanly, the kind of voice that had learned to carry authority without raising its volume. He stopped, turned. A nurse approached him at a pace that was not quite a jog, but was working hard to keep itself from becoming one. She was compact, early 40s, and she had the posture of someone who had spent many years being the last line of defense between a patient and the rest of the world. Her expression was composed, professionally neutral, but there was a firmness in the set of her jaw that told him exactly how this conversation was going to go. "Hold on a second," she said, stepping into his path with the confidence of someone who had done this before. "Amaya is stable, but she has been through a lot." Riley nodded once, respectful. His eyes moved past her shoulder for just a fraction of a moment, found nothing, came back. "I know you need to question her," the nurse continued, pulling his attention fully back the way a hand on a collar pulls a dog. "But no more than a few minutes. If she starts feeling overwhelmed, you will stop. You will leave. You can come back when she is ready." "Understood." "Her mother is in there too." The nurse paused, studying him. "Be respectful." "Yes, ma'am." She stepped aside, but slowly, giving him one more moment under her assessment. Riley continued down the hallway, slower now. She had been trying not to move. Moving was a negotiation with pain that she was not currently equipped to win, so she had been working on absolute stillness, on learning the exact position in which her body would hurt the least, and then staying there. It was not working. The hospital bed was too thin beneath her. The pillow is too flat. Every few minutes her body shifted by some small, involuntary degree, adjusting for the pressure of the mattress against her hip, or the pull of the IV line against the back of her hand, and each adjustment sent the pain rippling outward. The worst of it was in her side. Beneath the white gauze bandaging, beneath the layers of tape holding everything in place, 3 of her ribs bore lacerations that the attending physician had described to her mother in a low voice he had clearly believed Amaya could not hear. 2 of the cuts were clean, the kind made by something with a true edge, something that had moved fast and deliberately. The 3rd was not clean. The 3rd was torn. Whatever had made it had not just cut, but dragged, had caught and pulled, had worked through the surface tissue and kept going until it found muscle, and kept going past that too, deep enough that the sutures holding it closed were working against the grain of her body with every breath she took. She could feel each one, could feel the individual tug of each stitch when her lungs expanded, a sensation like a seam being tested from the inside. Not sharp, exactly. Sharp would have been manageable. This was something more patient than sharp. Something that planned to stay. Her shoulder was worse in a different way. The impact had not cut. It had crushed. The bruising had spread from the point of contact in every direction. The tissue underneath was swollen hard, packed tight with fluid and inflammation, pressing back against the skin from the inside with a dull, insistent pressure. It felt like a hand gripping her shoulder from within, and slowly, carefully, increasing its squeeze. Her mother sat in the corner of the room in one of the hospital's narrow visitor chairs, a paperback open across her lap, though Amaya had not seen her turn a page in a last hour. She knew the specific quality of the worry her mother was feeling right now. It was not the clean, manageable worry of a problem with a solution. It was the other kind. The kind that sat in your chest without a name and made everything you looked at feel slightly conditional, slightly uncertain. The television was on across the room. Amaya had turned it on herself, not because she wanted to watch anything, but because the silence of the room had begun to feel inhabited in a way she could not quite explain. The sound of the TV was thin and impersonal, and she could ignore most of it, and that was what she needed. Until she could not ignore it anymore. The anchor appeared mid-sentence, composed and grave in that way of network journalists delivering news that was too large for composure, but too professional for grief. She was seated at a desk with a graphic over her shoulder. Sparta Woodlands Recovery. Beneath it, in smaller text, all victims confirmed. Authorities have confirmed, the anchor was saying, that the bodies of all missing hunters have been recovered this morning, deep within the Sparta woodlands. Amaya's breathing went shallow. The cut went to footage, and the footage was bad. Not bad in the clinical, sanitized way of most news broadcasts, where the truly terrible things were kept just off camera, implied rather than shown. This footage was bad in the way of footage taken by someone whose hands were shaking, someone who had not yet built enough professional distance between themselves and what they were seeing to hold the camera steady. The frame lurched and resettled. Trees moved past in the background, their branches swaying against a gray sky that still had rain in it. Then the ground, wet earth churned by many boots, tire tracks from equipment, the long drag marks of something heavy being pulled across soft ground from somewhere deeper in the trees to somewhere that had lights and vehicles and the infrastructure of official response. The black bags appeared at the edge of the frame. There were 5 of them lined up along the edge of the tree line, each one zipped and tagged and bearing the collapsed flatness of a container that had been filled and sealed. They were on gurneys, the wheels sinking slightly into the soft ground, attended by figures in gloves and white Tyvek, the disposable full body suits that investigators wore at scenes where the evidence needed protecting from them as much as they needed protecting from it. The footage held on them for too long. The flies were audible, a low, thick buzzing that the camera's microphone had picked up without intending to, a sound that existed just beneath the voices of the investigators on scene and the crackle of radio equipment, dense and purposeful and completely indifferent to everything happening around it. Sources on scene described the discovery as horrific, the anchor's voice said over the footage. One of the bags was being moved. The gurney's wheels caught on something in the wet earth, and the whole thing lurched sideways, and the person guiding it reached out with both hands to catch it. And for just a moment, the bag shifted with the momentum of its contents, and the contents moved. Not the way a body moves, something looser than that. The bag's surface rippled in 2 separate places, in 2 directions that did not correspond to each other. And Amaya understood, without wanting to understand, what that meant, what it indicated about the condition of what was inside it. Her throat closed. Among the dead was Marcus Stewart. The name landed in her chest like something solid dropped from a height. Marcus, who had been out there in those woods looking for something that did not want to be looked for, and who had found it, and who was now inside one of those bags at the edge of the tree line, while flies worked the nearby air with perfect, mechanical patience. The footage cut. New image. A stretcher being loaded into an ambulance. A figure on the stretcher barely visible beneath emergency blankets, and the attended bustle of paramedics working fast in the rain. A face visible where the blanket had slipped. Amaya recognized the face. It was her. Her own face turned sideways on the stretcher, slack and pale beneath the mud, lips parted around a breath that she had apparently been taking at that exact moment, though she had no memory of it. She looked small. The anchor's voice. The sole survivor whose identity has not been officially released. Her mother looked up. Whatever she saw on Amaya's face was enough. She was out of the chair and across the room before Amaya could form a word, moving with the controlled urgency of someone who had been watching for exactly this and had been ready for it. Her hand found the remote on the bedside table. The television went dark. Silence rushed in, louder than the broadcast had been. "You don't need to watch that," her mother said. Amaya's voice, when it came, was quieter than she expected it to be. "Thanks, Mom." She stared at the dark screen for a moment longer. Her own reflection stared back at her, ghost-like and dim, visible only in the blackness of the dead television. She looked at it the way you look at something you are trying not to look at, without quite being able to stop. She looked away. Outside the window, the night was dark. Wind pushed against the glass in slow, irregular pulses, not hard enough to rattle anything, just hard enough to remind you that it was there. A knock at the door. "Come in," her mother said. The door opened. Officer Riley stepped into the room, and for just a second, before his professional composure reasserted itself completely, he stopped. The pause of a man taking a quick accounting of what he was looking at and adjusting his internal understanding accordingly. He was taking in the bandages, the IV drip, the monitors, the specific quality of her stillness, which was not the stillness of rest, but the stillness of a person who had learned in the last 12 hours that stillness was the price of a reduced level of suffering. He was taking in the fact that she was alive. Amaya watched him do it. She was good at watching people. She had always been good at it, the kind of attentiveness that came not from suspicion, but from a lifelong habit of reading the room. He had been out there too. She had known that before she saw the stain on his sleeve, but the stain confirmed it. He had been in those woods. He had seen what the news cameras had caught and whatever they had not caught. And he was here, now, in her hospital room at this hour, because he had been in those woods, and she had been in those woods, and that made them, in some technical and temporary sense, the closest things to witnesses that the situation had produced. She was going to be very careful. "Hello again, Officer Riley," her mother said. Her mother's voice had the warmth of a woman being polite under significant strain, professionally gracious in the way of someone who had not yet decided whether this visitor was welcome. "Hello, ma'am." Riley's voice was low, southern, the vowels slightly longer than their northern equivalents. "Hey, Amaya." She managed something that was adjacent to a nod. "I would like to ask Amaya a few questions, only if you are comfortable stepping out for a moment." Her mother's hand found her arm, light and specific, just below the edge of the bandaging. "She is exhausted." "I know," Riley said. "I will keep it brief." Amaya's voice surprised her by working on the first try. "It's okay, Mom. I can answer his questions." Her mother held for a moment, looking at her. Amaya kept her face level, kept her eyes steady, gave her nothing to catch on. Her mother exhaled through her nose. "All right." She stood, smoothing her clothes with the precise movements of someone performing composure rather than feeling it. At the door, she paused, with one hand on the frame, and looked back at Riley. "If she gets upset, I am coming right back in." "Yes, ma'am." The door closed. The room got smaller. Riley pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed. Not aggressively close, but a respectful distance. He sat with his hat in his hands, the notebook already out, pen uncapped. His movements were deliberate and unthreatening. "Miss Amaya." Riley's voice was gentle, in the specific way of someone who had learned that gentleness was a more effective tool than pressure. "I am glad you are all right. I know this is not easy," he continued, "but can you tell me what happened out there?" Amaya looked at the ceiling. The ceiling was acoustic tile, pocked and uniform, installed in a grid of metal tracks that ran in 2 directions overhead. Looking at it helped her keep her voice level. It helped her maintain the controlled distance between what she was saying and what she knew. "Roscoe ran off the day before," she said. Her voice came out steady, which was what she had asked it to do. "He never returned home the next day. I went into the woods, where I last saw him on my video feed." She heard the pen move across the paper, a dry scratching sound that seemed very loud in the quiet room. "And did you see anyone else?" Riley asked. "We know several hunters were missing at that time." She exhaled, slow, measured. "About an hour into the woods," she said, "I ran into Jamal." The name tightened something deep in her chest. "He was looking for Marcus. He was scared when I saw." She paused, chose the next words carefully, the way you choose your footing on unstable ground, one step at a time, feeling for what will hold your weight. "He told me he found the missing hunters." She stopped. She did not want to keep going. She made herself keep going. "We found what was left of them." The pen paused mid-note. "And Jamal?" "We got separated," Amaya said. "I lost him in the woods." Riley let it sit for several seconds longer than conversation required. She did not fill it. She was not going to fill it. She had been in enough difficult conversations to know the difference between a silence that meant something had gone wrong and a silence that was meant to make you think something had gone wrong. She kept her mouth still, kept her eyes on the ceiling. "Amaya?" His voice had shifted, slightly. Not harder, exactly. More direct. The gentleness was still there, but it had moved to the side to make room for something more pointed. "People around town are saying strange things." A pause. "Moving shadows, weird sounds, things that do not make sense." She said nothing. "Amaya," his voice was low, "I need to know who attacked you." She blinked once. "I need to know where it happened, the exact location. If there is somebody out there, some person, some threat still moving around in those woods, we need to find them before someone else gets hurt." He leaned a little closer, voice careful, steady. "You are not the only one who uses those woods. Families, kids. If there is something out there, and we do not stop it." Riley sat back. He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that had weight to it, the kind that settled into the room and stayed. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped further, flattened out into something that was trying very hard not to become something else. "You know we found Jamal," he said. The words hit the center of her chest. She did not move. She did not turn her head. But something behind her eyes changed. and she felt her jaw go tight, felt the muscles in her face working against each other, pulling in two directions at once. He was about 200 yards past the mutilated bodies. Riley continued. His voice was even. It was the voice of a man who had been doing this for a long time and had learned that evenness was a form of mercy. He was on the ground, on his back. A pause that lasted one full breath. He had been opened up, from the collarbone down. Something had tore through him and kept going. The attending deputy said it looked like something had gone through him fast, one motion, like whatever made those cuts was not trying, like it was easy. She stared at the ceiling. His chest was split open, Riley said. The ribs on the left side were broken outward. The coroner said it looked like something had reached inside him. He let that sit for exactly 1 second. His arms were out to his sides. His rifle was still in his right hand. He never dropped it. Another pause. His face was turned toward the tree line, like he died looking at something. He was terrified. She could feel her own pulse in the cuts across her temple. She could feel each stitch in her side pulling with every breath she drew. The tears came without warning, without sound, without any shift in her expression. They simply appeared at the outer corners of her eyes and began to run, slow and straight, down the sides of her face and into her hair, where it spread against the pillow. She did not reach up to wipe them. She did not blink them away. She just let them go, the way you let go of something you have been holding too tight for too long. She kept her eyes on the ceiling. Amaya. His voice had changed. The professionalism was still there, but it had thinned out, worn down to something underneath it, something genuine. I am asking you, please, tell me what happened out there. She knew what would happen if she told him. She knew it the way you know a thing you have already played out to its end in your head. Men with guns, helicopters, dogs trained to track a scent. The whole machinery of pursuit pointed at those woods, at something that had looked down at her broken and bleeding in the mud, and chosen to walk away. It had marked her and left. It had taken its dead and gone, and the forest had gone quiet in a way that did not feel like danger. It felt like the end of something. She did not want to be the reason it became the beginning of something else. She did not want its blood on her hands the way its kin's blood had been on them. And she did not want to look up one day and find out that the only reason she was still breathing was because she had handed the thing that spared her over to people who would not spare it back. I saw what you looked like when they brought you out. I saw what condition you were in. His voice dropped further. I have been doing this job for 22 years, and I have never seen anything like that. I have never seen a person come out of something like that alive. Whatever you went through out there, it should have killed you. And it killed Jamal. And it killed Marcus and Carl and 4 other men. His voice tightened at the edges. Tell me what happened. Let me help you. Let me stop it. The tears ran down her face. She stared at the ceiling. She did not say a word. The silence between them stretched out long and flat and full of everything that was not going to be said. The monitors in the room kept their soft, steady rhythm. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. Riley sat there for a while longer, hands loose on his hat brim, watching her face. She could feel him watching. She did not look at him. Finally, he exhaled through his nose, a long, slow sound. He picked up his pen, closed his notebook. All right, he said. If you remember anything else, anything specific, you let me know. She let that sit for exactly 1 second. "Do you know where my clothes are?" The question was neutral. She had been working on making it neutral since he entered the room. She needed the shoulder bag. She had been thinking about the shoulder bag since she came back to full consciousness 4 hours ago and understood where she was and began the process of accounting for what she had on her and what she did not. The bag had been on her when they found her. She knew it had been on her because she had never taken it off. It needed to be in her possession and not in anyone else's. "The nurses bagged your clothes and gave them to your mother. Your shoulder bag, too." Riley stood, tucking his notebook back into his breast pocket. He set the visitor's chair back where he had found it, with the careful habit of someone who always returned things to their proper places. "I will send her back in to sit with you." "Thank you." He left. His footsteps moved down the hallway, audible for a few seconds, then swallowed by the general ambient sound of the hospital at work. Wheels on flooring, a monitor in a distant room cycling through its tones, the PA system murmuring something too far away to decipher. Amaya let out a breath. The room settled around her. She turned her head toward the window. The parking lot lights threw their amber glow against the low ceiling of clouds. Wind moved against the glass in slow, irregular pulses, the same wind as before, patient and indifferent. She watched it move a branch into and out of the edge of the window frame, once, twice, without particular interest in the branch. She was thinking about what she had not said. The door opened. Her mother came back in. Her mother crossed the bed and took her daughter's hand, the uninjured one, and held it between both of hers with a firmness that communicated everything she was not saying out loud. And Amaya let herself be held. Let that contact be the one real thing in the room. Chapter 22. It had been a month since the nightmare. A month since Amaya had crawled out of the woods, bloodied, broken, but alive. Now she sat at her mother's kitchen table, the soft clink of dishes filling the quiet room. Sunlight streamed through the window, spilling across the faded tablecloth, and for the first time in weeks, the smell of coffee, grits, scrambled eggs, and sausage almost felt like normal life. Almost. Her mother set a steaming mug in front of her, studying her daughter's weary face with eyes that had aged from worry. "Are you sure you're ready to head back to Sparta?" Mama asked gently. "You've been through a lot. No one would blame you for staying a little longer." Amaya wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her bruised fingers. She sipped slowly, managing a tired smile. "Thanks, Mama, but I think I'm ready. I can't hide here forever, right? Besides..." She glanced down at the floor, where Roscoe lay sprawled. "I am grateful and lucky the search party found him while looking for me and the others. I think he's been missing home just as much as me." Roscoe's tail thumped against the linoleum, steady and strong. Amaya leaned down, running her fingers through his fur, scratching behind his ears. For a moment, her smile softened into something genuine. Her mother chuckled, shaking her head. "That dog caused us both more worry than he'll ever know. Chasing after deer like a fool and getting himself lost. But he's lucky those men found him." Her tone dropped, quiet but heartfelt. "I am just glad he's safe, and that you are too, Amaya." The words caught in the air. Amaya's smile faltered, her eyes drifting to the window. Outside, the trees swayed in the breeze. Her mother noticed, her brow knitting as she sat down across from her. "You never did tell me everything that happened out there," Mama said softly. "And these scars." She reached out, her fingertips brushing lightly across Amaya's temple. The 3 thin, raised lines glistened under the light. "And I won't press you, but I know it keeps you up at night, doesn't it? Tell me, Why didn't you want me washing your clothes from that day, or going into your bag? Amaya's fingers tightened around the mug. Her clothes, the blood, the alien wristband, the alien disc. She kept those hidden. She forced her face to remain calm, her words carefully chosen. Some things, her voice was quiet, nearly breaking. Some things are too hard to explain, even to myself. All that matters now is that it's over. Roscoe's safe. I'm safe. Her mother reached across the table, taking Amaya's hand in her own. The warmth of her touch steadied her, grounding her in a way nothing else could. You don't have to carry that weight alone, Mama whispered. Whatever happened in those woods, you came back to me. That's all I care about. Amaya's throat tightened. She blinked hard against the sting in her eyes, managing a faint smile. I know, Mama, and I'm grateful. But I need to go back, face the woods again, see if I can find some peace. I can't let those woods scare me away forever. Her mother studied her for a long, searching moment. She sighed, the sound heavy with both love and fear, then nodded. I just want you to promise me, if things don't feel right, you'll come back. No questions, no hesitation. You come back to me, Amaya. Amaya looked her straight in the eye, her voice firm. I promise, Mama. A silence fell, not awkward, but deep with understanding. Roscoe shifted, thumping his tail against the floor again. Mama reached down to pat his head, smiling softly. He's sure going to miss all the extra treats I've been slipping him. Isn't that right, Roscoe? Roscoe gave a low bark, his tail wagging harder, the sound breaking the heaviness in the room. Amaya chuckled, the tension easing from her shoulders. Hugh spoiled him rotten. I'm going to have to break him of that habit when we get back. Oh, I doubt he'll let you, Mama teased. He's got a taste for the good life now. But you'll be all right, Amaya. You always have been strong. Amaya met her mother's gaze, then turned back toward the window, where the trees danced in the wind. She drew in a deep breath, a mixture of fear and determination stirring in her chest. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. Yeah, she whispered, almost to herself. I think I'm finally starting to believe that, too. Chapter 23. The country road stretched long and familiar, dirt and gravel crunching beneath Amaya's tires as she steered through the woods toward home. Roscoe sat in the back seat, his head resting on the window ledge. His tail thumped lazily, a soft rhythm in the otherwise quiet ride. Amaya kept her gaze steady on the winding road, but her mind was elsewhere. On the passenger seat sat her camo shoulder bag, and inside it, wrapped tight, was the alien wristband, metal disc, and her clothes. She had told herself 100 times that she would figure out what to do with them once she was home. After weeks of recovery, bruises healed, cuts turned to scars, she had told herself she was ready to face the quiet of her home again, ready to bury the nightmares with the comfort of silence. The engine hummed low along the last bend. The tree line opened up ahead, and the clearing came into view, and she felt the familiar loosening in her chest that always came with the first sight of her property. But as the last bend of the dirt road curved into view, her stomach dropped. 4 black SUVs lined up along the dirt in front of her porch with the neat, deliberate spacing. Their windows were dark. A group of men dressed in all black were standing near the vehicles. Her foot came off the accelerator. She let the car roll to a stop, sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel, her eyes moving over the vehicles, counting them, counting the figures she could make out near the lead SUV. Her chest rose and fell in a slow, measured breath. Roscoe whined softly, picking up on her tension. She forced herself calm, even as her pulse quickened. She left Roscoe inside, double-tapping the key fob to lock the doors, and stepped out. "Amaya," Officer Riley called, his voice firm. "Glad to see you up and about." Amaya stiffened, raising her chin as she closed the distance between them. "Officer Riley, is this some kind of welcome home party? Because I don't remember telling anyone I was coming home today." Officer Riley gave a tight smile. "I called your mother an hour ago to check up on you, and she told me you were heading home. I thought I would meet you here to check up on you." Amaya let out a heavy sigh that trembled halfway through. "If you were just coming here to check on me," she said slowly, her voice rough, "then who are they?" Her eyes shifted past him toward the dozens of men in black waiting behind him. Officer Riley smiled again, then gestured to the man beside him. The stranger was tall, sharply dressed. His eyes studied her the way a hawk studied prey, measured, calculating, unyielding. "Amaya." Riley's voice shifted, something sympathetic moving through the official tone. "This is Sean Keyes. He's with a specialized branch of the government. They're interested in certain matters you might have stumbled on." Keyes looked at her, a long, patient look, the kind that was accustomed to people looking back. "Miss Amaya?" His voice was smooth, low, carrying the quiet authority of someone who did not need volume to make a point. "I appreciate you meeting with us." She looked at him steadily. "I did not agree to a meeting." "You did not need to." His expression did not change. "I represent the Otherworldly Lifeforms Program, OWLF. We investigate incidents that defy conventional explanations, and I think you know why I'm here." A brief pause, no longer than a breath. "We are aware you withheld some items recovered from your adventure in the woods." The wind moved through the trees behind her. She could hear it coming before it arrived, the slow rustling that worked through the canopy from somewhere deeper in the pines. "I told Officer Riley everything I could remember." Her voice was level, her face giving nothing. "I don't know what else you think I've forgotten to tell him." "Did you?" The faintest suggestion of something behind his eyes, not amusement exactly, but adjacent to it. "Because our sweep of your belongings from the hospital says otherwise. Specifically, a severed appendage with technology that interests us very much." One of the nearby SUVs hummed faintly, a low vibration under the silence, barely audible. She looked at him for a long second. "If you already knew I had it, why didn't you just take it when you had access to my things at the hospital?" Keyes held her gaze, unhurried. "Because something like this cannot be taken," he said. "It has to be given. You survived that encounter. That means you have a claim to what came out of it that we do not." He let that land before he continued. "Taking it from you without your knowledge would have been the easy path. It also would have been the wrong one. We need your trust far more than we need the device." Amaya said nothing and showed no signs of what they were saying was true. Riley took a small step forward. His voice dropped back into the softer register, the one she recognized from the hospital room. "Amaya, I saw what you looked like when we found you. I believe you went through something none of us can imagine. Keyes and his people, they can help make sense of it, but they need your cooperation." Keyes tilted his head slightly. "Let's not waste time. The creature you faced, we call them predators. Extraordinary, dangerous beings not of this world, and the fact that you survived the encounter makes you exceptional." His eyes moved briefly to the marks at her temple, 3 thin raised lines catching the pale afternoon light. "You were marked. That alone makes you valuable, to us to everyone. From the car, behind the glass, Roscoe barked once, sharp and short. Predators? The word tasted strange in her mouth. Accurate in a way that was worse for being accurate. That thing nearly killed me, and when the other one— There was a second one? Keyes said, and the smoothness of his voice pulled taut around something underneath it. Interest so sharp it almost cut through the surface. She had already said too much. She heard it the moment the words left her. And it marked you. He studied her face. 3 shallow cuts, precise and deliberate. His gaze moved to her temple slowly. Along the temple. Ceremonial placement. His voice dropped lower, analytical, turning the information over as he spoke. A hunter's acknowledgement. A brief pause. You're a warrior. His voice went quieter still, aimed more at himself than at her. Fascinating. She held herself still. Her jaw was tight. The cuts along her temple pulsed faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat, the way they always did when her pulse picked up. I did not ask for any of this. No. Keyes let the words settle. But it found you. And now you are part of it. His voice dropped to something final and flat. Whether you like it or not. The wind pressed through the trees in a slow surge, bending the tops of the pines at the edge of the clearing, the sound like something breathing. Nobody spoke. The CUVs hummed their low, quiet hum. Roscoe shifted behind the glass. She turned and headed back toward her car. Stay, she whispered through the cracked window. Her hand found the door and opened it. She reached inside the car and pulled out her camo shoulder bag. The fabric was stiff and still faintly stained, dark patches along the folds that no amount of washing would have fully reached. She could feel the weight inside it shifting as she moved, the heavy, dull clunk of metal against metal, the faint, breathless chirp of something electronic, still alive after all these weeks, the weight of it pulling at her arm. She closed the car door and headed back toward the men. This is what you came for. She held the bag out, her voice steady, her eyes on Keyes. She loosened her grip and let him take it. His hands closed around it with careful precision of a man who had been waiting for exactly this and was not going to let his expression show how much. He held the shoulder bag for a moment without opening it. Then he pulled the fabric back just far enough to see inside, and for one unguarded second, something moved through his face. Something that was not calm, not measured, just raw and honest, the look of a person staring at proof of something they had spent a long time believing without anyone ever confirming it. Good. His voice came out quietly. Now, Amaya, we have a few more questions. He looked up from the bundle. And some opportunities. You may find yourself indispensable to this investigation. She looked at him squarely. I am not joining anything. We are not recruiting. His voice stayed easy. We are offering protection. A brief pause. And answers. She stood with that for a moment, her eyes moving from Keyes to Riley, and then past both of them toward the dark windows of the SUVs, at the shapes of the people behind the glass she still had not been formally introduced to. People who already knew her name. People who had already been through her hospital belongings and were standing in her yard like they had every right to be there. I kept them so nobody else would get hurt. The wind came through the trees again. She listened to it. She thought about the clearing where the small one had stood over her in the rain, its yellow eyes burning, the disc raised above her, and then, instead of the killing blow, the 3 shallow cuts, and then nothing. The silence after. The way the woods had felt different once it was gone. Not empty. Settled. Like something had been decided, and the deciding was done. She exhaled. If I help. She paused just long enough to make it clear she was not asking, she was setting terms. Let my mom know, and take Roscoe back to her. She continued, "Nobody lies to me. I want to know everything about these predators." Keyes held her gaze. Agreed. Riley's voice came in softer than she expected, and somehow that made it heavier. "Amaya, this does not end here." "I know." She turned and looked back at her home. The front door sat the same way she had left it weeks ago, shut and waiting. The clearing around it was still, the grass long from no one cutting it, the food bowl still sitting where she had placed it by the steps. It all looked exactly like hers. It looked like the life she had been trying to come back to. She stood there looking at it for a long moment. "Well," she said quietly, "there goes my quiet life." The breath she let out was slow. It moved through her in a long, uneven line, something releasing that she had been holding together for a very long time. "All right." She turned back to face them. "Also, I can walk away at any time, correct?" Keyes did not hesitate. Of course. His voice carried the smooth, even confidence of someone delivering a line he had delivered before. "That is what makes you so valuable to us." Behind her, from inside the locked car, Roscoe barked again. Louder this time, more insistent, his voice filling the clearing and bouncing off the tree line. The wind moved through the trees at the edge of the property. It came in a long, slow push, bending the high branches, working down through the canopy until it reached the clearing and spread across her skin like a breath, like something deep in the woods drawing air. She stood between the men and the trees and let it pass. Then she turned and walked toward the SUV and did not look back at the house again. You've just listened to Predator Survival Instincts, a novelization created and written by Sherry Amuri.